The January 9th meeting of 2025 is a combination meeting of the Burlington High School Building Committee and the Burlington School Committee. The public can also access meeting via WebEx technology. The Burlington High School Building Committee will hear public comments in person and virtually. Meetings are also broadcast live on Burlington Cable Access TV, and video audio recordings are being made. This meeting of the Burlington High School Building Committee will be held in person at the location provided on this notice. Members of the public are welcome to attend this in-person meeting. Please note that while an option for remote attendance or participation is being provided as a courtesy to the public, the meeting hearing will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast unless otherwise required by law. Members of the public with particular interest in a specific item on
I think you guys are muted.
should make plans for in-person versus virtual attendance accordingly. If you are participating remotely, please identify yourself by typing your name on screen in advance and verbally once you are identified to speak. We request you please turn on your camera. Comments and statements are limited to 3 minutes. Can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lisa, can you hear the room?
No, I can't hear anything.
Okay.
Is that Lisa?
Can you hear us now?
Okay. You're mute. I think you're all set now, but you've been muted.
Are we good, or we want me to test?
Good.
We can hear you. We can hear you now, Catherine.
Excellent, thank you. I appreciate you letting me know. Okay. So, the first item on the agenda is the approval of the December 12th, 2024 meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I will go ahead and take a roll call, a vote. Ms. Monaco?
Aye.
Is Jeremy Brooks online?
He's right
Oh,
here.
there you are.
Stepped
Where-
out. He stepped out
Was
for a
there, but
moment.
he's hiding now.
Yeah.
Oh,
He's here.
all right. Megan?
Yes.
Melissa, you're online?
Yes, I vote yes.
Yep. Dr. Conti?
Yes.
All right. Is Lisa Chen
Online.
online? Lisa?
Yes,
All right.
yes.
Joe?
I'm here, yes.
Okay. And
Nicole?
is Mimi's here? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Chris Campbell? Okay, he's not here.
He's not on.
I'm just going to go through. Nicole?
Yes.
Thank you. Bob?
Yes.
And Wendy's not online. Wendy not here. Okay. Is John Denizio here?
Oh.
Doesn't look like it. All right, she's not here. Doug Davidson?
Abstain.
Abstain? Okay. And it looks like Neil, oh, we're not even going to find Neil.
Neil's not here, I don't think.
Neil's not here. Okay. And Laura, it looks like you're online.
Yep, here.
And how do you vote? Yes, no, or abstain on the minutes?
Yes.
Okay. Gail? Right, and Tom, where's Tom? He's usually here. Is Tom online or not here tonight? I don't see him, okay. And Paul is not online and not here. Martha?
Yes.
Okay, and Mark?
Yes.
Okay, and the chair is a yes. Didn't miss anyone, right?
Yeah, we're all good.
Jeremy's back.
Oh, Jeremy, you're back, yes. How do you
I'll
vote?
abstain, I wasn't here.
Okay, thank you. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 yeses and 2 abstentions. Okay. So the next item up is invoices and commitments for approval. And I think for invoices, Chris needs to take over for the vote.
Yes. It's hard to see these. We need motions for the invoices, which I'm trying desperately to read. Are they in here? They should be.
Oh, they're small here, too.
Did you make them any smaller,
Magnifying
guys?
glass.
Move that we approve the Dorn Whittier invoice number 14 dated December 24th in the amount of $18,000.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the invoice for Doran Whittier in the amount of $18,000. All those in favor? Mrs. Bond?
Aye.
Ms. Novoychuk?
Yes.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Ms. Masato?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. It's 5-0. And Melissa, did you make that motion?
Yes.
Like
You
Melissa.
want to make the next one?
Yep. I move that we approve the TAPE invoice number 241211 dated January 6, 2025 in the amount of $10,000.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the TAPE invoice 241211 in the amount of $10,000. All those in favor, Mrs. Bond?
Aye.
Mrs. Novoychuk?
Yes.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Mrs. Masato?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, that's 5-0-0. Okay,
All right. So the next up is public comment, and I don't see anybody here.
the room's empty.
I'm kidding. So is everyone coming up, or is there one person representing the group, or?
Coming up myself.
We have several people coming up.
Yes, and I just, a point of information, wondered why, I've never,
Could you please come up to the mic so everyone can hear you?
used to me talking over her. Just a question, why is public comment limited to 15 minutes? We have 33 people here, and granted, only a few of them want to speak, but I
That's
never
the
saw it.
standard. We give 15 at the beginning
Is it?
and 15 at the end.
Okay,
It's-
thank
It's
you.
what it's been all along.
Okay.
So if you could please identify yourself.
Yes,
and-
I will. I am Maureen Carr. I live at Six Valley Circle, and that's right through the path, the first house that you see. And so I know we've had conversations about noise and parking, all very relevant. I'm here to say a few words about damage, and such as water, and we all know what kind of damage water can do. So it came to light, all of you knew, but I did not know that there is a consideration for underground parking. And so I had a couple of questions on that, or comments. One being, we know this whole area is on a slope, and it slopes downward towards my house. And we have that spring that goes through, and it does flood from time to time. And when things happen at the school, like when they raised the grade, we felt it there too. So when I heard that there was going to be underground parking, of course, I thought red flags. Has this been done before by the project team that's working on this? Do they have something, from Burlington that they've done it before? And if you don't have the answer to that, you can always get back to me. I'd like to know that. Has there been a feasibility study? I did see where there was a study for the ground, the soil, and just took 3 feet and they hit groundwater. So we all know what that means, because there will be grading required, and just moving dirt, excavating. Whenever you do any kind of construction, that's bound to happen. So those are some of my concerns, and it's not just going to affect our house; it will affect other houses, since there's other houses on the water plane. So was this something that was considered, though, when this came up, with the underground parking? Because I know that the parking was an issue, and where we're going to put the parking at the stadium is here. So how much did you get into that? Because I know some of this is still being considered, so that would be interesting to note. And also, were there permits that were pulled? There would be permits required anytime that you deal with doing this type of project, even if there's an existing structure in place. So I don't know if that's been done, if a permit from the Conservation Commission, have they come out and done a feasibility study themselves? So lots of things are just, clouding up my head here, like, how is this going to negatively affect my house? It's one thing that I can get over with the noise if I have to, but, we all know what floods. Has anybody here had a flood in their house? It's not fun, and it's expensive. Right, yeah. So, I just want to keep that in mind. So, especially if you've done that before, that would, give some sort of peace of mind, but you know it's on a slope and water will find its way out. And that would be the direction that it would be heading, so. And from the studies, I couldn't tell. I downloaded some of them. I couldn't tell which buildings, which area. When I first started reading it, I thought, this sounds like it's the stadium that they were testing. And then the picture showed me that it was actually this area that they were testing. So I may have to go back and reread that again. And also, one more last thing, and I know because time is limited.
If you could wrap it up, please, because the 3 minutes are...
3 minutes, and I usually don't talk at all. Right, okay.
Good job.
Right. So there's going to be more meetings, I take it?
Oh, yes, of course.
All right.
And, certainly there are more community meetings coming up that we're listening as well, so.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. All right, who would like to come up next?
Looks like Bob Young.
Bob?
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Bob Young. I proudly live at 3 Valley Circle. Before I even start the clock, I'm in here tonight, and I don't see any nameplates. You know who you are. We don't know who you are. You got an emblem on, I can see that. But I think as a courtesy, for this subject or any, that everybody should have a nameplate. So this company that we hired, Dora and Whittier, you're responsible for everything on that webpage for this project? Sir?
Am I responsible?
Your company, everything that's there is on you. You put it on there. So do you stand behind it?
We put the information on the website, yes.
Yeah, so you stand behind it.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'd like to know...
Can we hold on one second? I know you're asking questions, but typically it's for comments, and then we will respond to questions after, right? I don't mean to...
I'd ask your indulgence, because I spoke to you on the phone, and, I had no idea that this is like the 12th meeting. So I'd ask your indulgence. I mean,
No, I know.
$300 to $400 million, so thank you.
Yep.
I'd like to know who is the contact person at that company that can answer questions. I don't want, all I saw on there, maybe I'm incorrect, there's a contact sheet. A contact sheet, no. That's unacceptable. You got paid tonight, and the other company got paid tonight. We should have names and contact information, phone and cell number, so that we can reach out to these people directly if we choose to. Thank you. So, on the About section, it has this paragraph, sir. In addition to multiple construction options, we're looking to study ways in which the school would be well integrated into the natural environment, as the current Burlington High School is surrounded by neighborhoods and conservation land. I'm going to repeat those last few words. Surrounded by neighborhoods and conservation land. So let me ask you, why is it that I see on another part of that, it says there's 2 options to move it, some of the project over to the existing student parking lot, as well as the remaining 3 are on the existing football and track. I mean, you're moving these items closer. If you put it on, why are you recommending, putting it over by the existing parking lot if you're, in another part of this, you're saying you're going to take into consideration the neighborhoods? I'd like an answer on that.
I think we're going to address some of your concerns. The part of this presentation, as the chair has said, this isn't a dialogue between us right now. We will certainly respond to all of your questions. And just as, my name's Terry Hartford. I work at
Thank you.
Doran Whittier.
Okay.
If you have the ability to look at the 13 other meetings, you will certainly realize who some of the folks are that are sitting here. And that contact is a way for you to get directly in touch with Rachel and I. Rachel works
Sure.
with me, and you would get a response. So that's a typical way of doing it. I don't normally just hand out my contact details, but you have the ability to get in touch with me whenever you would like, and we can have a separate dialogue.
So I don't know where that is, but I'd like it not just for me. And when I'm up here,
It's
I've been down...
BHSbuilding.com. All the information is on the website.
If I understood him, his name and Rachel's name's not up there.
But you have
And the
the
phone?
ability, so when you make an inquiry, I am then going to respond to you directly, and
Okay.
you're going to have my response.
Okay, we're spending a significant amount of money, and I think for us to go in blind, we should have the respect. You're asking for respect, we're asking for respect, and just something else you just said, there's going to be people coming on that have not seen the other 12, okay? So, anyway, there has to be some meetings where we can have a dialogue with these people. And I'm really strongly suggesting that. And when I was on the phone with you, let me get this out, we agreed, it's a fact, this is going to be potentially the biggest spending item in the history of this town. So to leave it to 3 minutes, to one-way communication, we'll get back to when we get around to it. It needs to be two-way communication to be
That's what
effective.
the community forum is for. That's where we hope have the open dialogue, like town meeting. We come to the community meetings that we will be holding in the future, and that's an open dialogue back and forth where we listen to concerns, we hear people's ideas, we can respond to them. So that when we're having a meeting like this, it's like a school committee meeting, right? We're essentially trying to, get through our agenda and accomplish, but then we have a separate meeting where we can have those open dialogues. And again, technically, I shouldn't be responding, but I want to because we've had conversations, and I want to make sure that I explain that and that we're.
I'm not talking to anybody. I'm on a meeting.
And let me just wrap up this question that I have. I don't understand why, if you're protecting or looking to protect the neighborhoods, or you acknowledge it, is that a real statement that you stand behind? Then why are you recommending putting things over on the parking lot, which would significantly, affect the neighborhoods that, other people are probably going to list? So I don't see how those two things come together, sir, Mr. Hartford. So I would like you to respond to it. If you could do it tonight, that would be fantastic. Or Rachel, and again, I don't know what your roles are with the company, but
Yeah,
I think we should know that, too.
I think the chair has made it clear that, it goes through the chair, this meeting. This is a formal school building committee and school committee meeting, as
Sure.
opposed to what you're looking to do. And I can happily offer my time to you tomorrow as well, if you'd like to
Sure.
have a
I'd be
discussion.
happy to do that.
I'm happy to do it.
But the thing of it is, I don't want it to be just me and you. This is why public meetings are important. And if you want to, stand behind her, that's your prerogative. But we're going to ask tough questions.
He already knows.
And somehow, some way,
It's in the-
it's going to happen. But I would appreciate if it would happen tonight, just because you want to say that it's such and such. It takes you maybe 2 minutes to answer the question I just asked you. It's a very direct question. And I assume, and maybe I'm wrong, but this is your role, part of your role with your company, and this is not your first rodeo. So I think you need to start answering questions.
Please.
Thank you.
Your time is up, and I understand.
generous.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I just want to let everyone know, the next community forum, we were going to announce it later, but because we're talking about it, is February 12th. So it will be posted, and again, I'm sure it'll be in a large enough forum to accommodate more people than there are here tonight. Okay? So anyone else who would like to come up?
Ellie, you want to go first, or you want me to go? Go ahead. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sharon Laurie, Precinct 3. I want to thank all of you people for being here to help support us as we try to navigate through a new school. So I have a couple of questions, and I know you probably can't answer them today, but I would appreciate if you could get back to my questions. So my first question is, have you decided on the top 3 designs? And if so, why? The question about moving the varsity field, where would the temporary field go? Does any of your designs at the high school property include adding new or additional entrances or exit to this school? And that's critical because there are several ways people could technically get into the school if you open up the streets, and of course that's going to cause more issues. Keep in mind that Cambridge Street is going down to a 1 lane, then opening up to 2 lanes at the high school. So there's a mega congestion that we're going to be dealing with. There are safety concerns as well, of course, because the kids will be coming and going as long with everyone else. For the last couple of days, I noticed that there has been a surveyor outside on Arlington Road, and they've been taking measurements around the high school. In the teacher parking lot area over where the rocks are. Can you elaborate on why? And is that something that is that part of the underground parking thing that's going on? The cost of the modules versus renting out Corporate Drive, if you intend to move forward with the underground parking and the new school on the high school field, has anyone considered Corporate Drive housing the students there? Back to the underground parking here. Now, I understand there's open space there right now. Can anyone confirm whether or not that space has been flooded? And if so, how are you going to mitigate it when you put the additional weight in here of an underground parking space? What I want to close with, 2 things. The building on the varsity field is surrounded by wetlands. Building in this space is surrounded by wetlands. What sense does it make as far as trying to expand at some point? You can't. So are we spending our money wisely, even considering these types of new spaces to build? My thought would be probably not. I'm hearing that this project is going to cost at least $320 million. I know that the town of Burlington's taxes are going up.
Please
I'm going to wrap this up. I think we should listen to our neighbors. They are our family. If you look at the Seaport, you look at Memorial Drive, you look at Sorrel Drive, they flood. They flood badly to the point where it's on the news. All of this high technology out there, all of these people that claim it's not supposed to flood, they flood. We do not have millions of dollars to fix and remedy these issues. So if you could come up with a plan, Corporate Drive seems like a really good plan. You may ask MU or the church, maybe they consider relocating somewhere. I think we really need to start thinking outside of the box and protecting our neighborhood and our citizens that pay a tremendous amount of dollars to live here. And thank you.
Thank you. Who wants to come up next?
Hi, Millie Nash, back again, a little bit wiser than my previous visits. And while everybody else is looking to the future, I thought who but me should talk about the past, because the past is prologue, to quote the archives building. Anyhow, when I came in the first time, and I so adore you, Chris, for saying, I'll understand this because that made two of us. And luckily, I came home with all of the plans, which I have been looking at ever since, which is why I'm becoming more and more discombobulated. But I thought it might be interesting to think back, because I have to say, you had 9 different plans that we could look at. In 1972, the high school that was built, there was one plan. We were busy arguing, do we need a school? And when it was discovered when we're on double sections and that isn't good enough, we go, oh my God, we do. So we took the one plan we had, and it was a beautiful design by prison makers, and it kind of looks like Norfolk Prison. But anyhow, it has a very, very strong foundation. And when Chris was asking, what if they just leave this stand till the cement crumbles, I kept thinking, that's an excellent question. So as I looked at this and thought, I reflected that Marshall Simons got renovated, keeping the building and fixing it as it needed to be fixed. It's gorgeous. Memorial did the same thing, and it's gorgeous. And I thought, okay, but we're the princes that married the frog, and our building is not going to look pretty, but it's good to remember that the reason they built it here was because before 1972, it was the only place big enough to build it. If it was the only place big enough to build it then, what are we asking about now? So we can't go too far. When we built it, my daughter graduated from a class of 600. We now have classes of 300. So what happened? We added BCAT, administration building, the preschool, all of these things which are so important, we need to keep them. The state ain't giving us any money, so why do we have to be beholden to the state? I say if we go for renovation, we don't have to think of the modular because the boiler is horrible, we fix it. Whatever is done, we do it bit by bit by bit so that the school doesn't close. The building gets fixed. True, it's ugly, but remember that ugly frog was a prince in disguise. And we'll soon know that this is a good school that I think we can build for a whole lot less than some of these plans. So I hope we will open up our thoughts to at least considering that. And when I come back next month, I may have a whole new idea. So stay tuned and thank you.
Right on the 3 minutes. I don't know how you did it.
That's amazing. My daughter said I never made a long story short.
Please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Laura Sharma. My husband and I just moved here in February to One Sunset Drive. I'm very nervous because despite being a public school teacher, you are a lot taller than the students I usually talk to. So I'm kind of here learning and knowing not much because I got home to a paper at my door saying that the varsity field was going to be moved to where the high school is, or as an option, and flip-flopping. Both my husband and I were very concerned when we read that paper because we live, you can see our kitchen lights, our kitchen window from the hill where I think it's the teacher parking lot or the student parking lot where all the graffiti is. Not graffiti, art, beautiful. But you can see us and you can see our house and we can see all the events and we can hear all the events. We can hear all of the games, but it's far enough away from us that it doesn't impact our quality of life. And we're invested. We're invested in this town because we just moved here. It's a huge purchase. We want to raise a family here. We're invested in the school system. And so we hear when there was a trunk or treat and announcements at 8 a.m. for a fun run or a race, we hear everything. So our biggest concerns with that flip-flop is being that field, that noise is going to be amplified, the lights are going to be amplified, and it's going to impact our neighborhood, it's going to impact us and our family. And so that's kind of what I came to say. So, thank you.
15 minutes yet?
Hello, good evening. My name's Elizabeth Zotos. I live with my husband at the bottom of Spruce Hill Road, which is just behind us here in the gym. We're residents here for 15 years, and we love it, and we're in a dead end, and we like the peace and quiet. We are very concerned about the flood zone that runs behind our houses and behind the school as well here. And our concern is what happens if this flood zone is disrupted with the excavations and everything that is going to be worked on here. Is the table going to rise in, the water table in our basements? Are our basements going to be flooded? My backyard, is it going to be flooded? That is really our main concern. And the other concern is we're neighbors, we're butters. If there's a football field behind us, we're going to hear everything. The lights are going to be shining in my bedroom. I won't be able to sit in my backyard and enjoy my barbecue with my family and friends. And, this is funny, but the wildlife, I have wildlife coming now. I have turtles in my yard that I really want them to move. What's going to happen? I'm going to have more turtles coming in, swimming in my pool than before. It's these little things to you might sound silly, but we live there. We're going to be staying there for a while. And if I have a football field behind my house, how is my quality of life going to be? And I know there's going to be an underground garage and all that, but you know what happens? People come from Lexington Street, and they walk down Valley Circle, and they park. And if there's a football field, they're going to do the same thing. They're going to come, and they're going to walk, and they're going to park there. And these teenagers sometimes are happy and excited, and who knows? They may, litter. They may destroy the property. In my mind, I'm just visualizing what is it going to be like to live next to a football field, a varsity field, excuse me. So these are our main concerns. And we really don't want a football field in our backyard. And I'm sure you don't either in your backyard. So that's our concern. And thank you for listening and giving me the opportunity to speak my mind on this subject. So I hope it doesn't happen in our backyard, and somewhere else be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And you too did it in less than 3 minutes. That's awesome. Thank you. Joanne?
Hi, Joanne Frustacci, Precinct 3 Town Meeting and a butter, 6 Valley Circle. I'll be really brief, surprisingly. As I was coming out of the house to walk over here, because we live that close, this is a video of a car backing up into my driveway, picking a kid up at 6:30 at the end of the street, and then pulling out and driving up the street. I just thought that was pretty funny. So we want to convey that, we all make compromises for everybody to have a convenience. We have tons of cars on our street every morning, afternoon, and evening, and it is a dead end. We made allowances for the fact that there was a 12-inch grade raise of an entire softball field because I didn't want the kids to be standing in mud. Our basements all flooded more and more frequently. Instead of one sump pump, people got 2 sump pumps. We really tried to take it on the chin and, be really responsive, and we want the kids to have a good education. We want a nice school. We do request a butter-only meetings. I know that Lexington has had 3, and we would like to know when our butter meeting is. Some abutters got letters. I never got one, and I'm like, I couldn't be more on top of this school, as Dr. Conti knows, in terms of distance. So I don't know why I never got that letter, but we would like letters sent out to abutters and a butter-only meeting so that we could discuss these things. Anything else? Oh, yes, one other question for when you come. The 320 or 30 million to put a new school on Varsity Field, which sounds so nice, would leave no place for Varsity Field except here. Are there viable alternatives? I think not. I've spoken to people in politics all over town. There hasn't been one identified possible thing that's big enough to have a varsity field. None. And so there has to be a viable option because we cannot stand for a field here. And then the second thing is the money for the demolishing of this school, the building of that stadium, if you do go through with that plan, is that included in the 320 million? It is, yes. Okay. And I did ask last time, Dan Ratsky's here, I don't know if he's too shy to stand up and speak, but he did ask, could you break out the demolishing cost for the high school? So thank you.
Thank you, Joanne.
Thank you, Joanne.
Anyone else?
Thank you, Joanne.
It's going to be a late night.
15 minutes, or you want to just...
So just want to let everyone know, just so that you don't have to listen to the middle of the meeting unless you would like to stay, because we'd love you all to stay. Instead of having 2 sessions, because we usually do one at the beginning, one at the end, I'll just let everyone go now for the public comments, and then we'll go on with the rest of the meeting. So please.
Okay. I just had a really quick question.
Well, please identify yourself, though, please.
I'm Rupen Sharma.
Okay.
I'm Laura's husband. I live right down here. My wife spoke earlier. I just have a really good question. So how, in terms of the process, how this was done, so we had a company and who gave us 10 different options. Did we have any independent third party assessing those options? Or maybe this is too early when we come down to, like, or 2 or 3 options, when we cut it down there, are we going to have an independent third party assessing those options? My concern here is just that we hopefully we select the most cost effective and most sensible option out of all. Just hearing some of the things, some of the options of demolishing this building, moving the whole thing, it just didn't sound cost effective and good use of taxpayer dollars. And it's a lot of money. So are we trusting just one company with all those recommendations and everything, or are we going to have a third party also assess those recommendations?
Yes. Jack.
Jack.
Hi, Jack.
Thank you. Jack Kelly, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 7. I know part of the evaluation of your different options is cost, value. And one of the considerations that I want to know if you've considered is, if you choose the corporate drive option, in factoring your costs, have you considered the value of the vacant piece of land that will be left? And the reason I've asked that is, some time ago, a number of us were pushing the town to buy the old Building 19 site. And I understand it was not a bad price. Had the town done that, they would have had extra land. The police station would now be built, and we would have extra parking space for the Marion Tavern. The value of what's left if you move to Corporate Drive and tear down the middle of this building is you have some valuable space. You can temporarily use it for a nice solar array to pay to heat and air condition, what remains until the town has some other need for it. So calculating the value of the land is something that you may or may not have considered. I'm just wondering if you're considering that in the overall evaluation of that option. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Who would like to come up next? Anyone? Hand up.
Anyone online?
All right. Is there someone online that would like to speak or have any comments?
This is decided. It's
No. Oh, yes, Ms. Simon.
Whenever the public comment is over, people are obviously free to leave, and I appreciate the chair setting it up that way. But I would strongly encourage people to stay, because we're going to hear tonight a level of detail
Martha,
that we
yeah,
haven't.
Could I?
Okay,
Actually,
can you
you're
talk
stealing
about
my
that
thunder,
then?
yes,
Okay.
so thank you very much. I just wanted to make sure that there was nobody online. So yes, I invite you all to stay through the meeting, come to all of our meetings, come to the community sessions, communicate with us on the website. We are very interested in hearing what the public has to say. Some of the ideas that we actually have presented and are considering are because they were brought to us at, the beer garden, for example. So that's how some of the design options came up for where we're placing the school. So we are listening to people. No decisions have been made yet in terms of which option we're going with. I can assure you that whatever option that we come up with as a committee is going to be an option that makes sense, because the town has given us the $1.5 million to do this feasibility study. And as this committee has been challenged to come up with something that's going to work for the community, that will pass on a vote, because, we think there's going to be a debt exclusion for this. So we're not going to waste everyone's time by presenting something to town meeting and to the town that's going to be turned down. We have to make sure we're listening and that we come up with something that makes sense. So there's a whole process to this. We're going through the whole, process. We're following the MSBA process, even though it's not an MSBA project. So I highly recommend that, anyone who wants to catch up to go to the BHS building.com site and watch past meetings and look at the presentations that are there. Come to the presentations that we're doing in the future. I know we're going to do walk through this building so people can see what is existing here and the challenges of trying to do a full renovation. Again, if you listen to past meetings, you will hear that. You'll hear, some of the discussion. We don't have all the costs in place and finalized, but you will see in general what it would cost to do a full renovation versus all the different options that we've put forward. So, please educate yourselves as much as you can. We do invite you to continue to come and to, make your comments and listen, and we're listening to you. So thank you all for coming this evening. I apologize again for being late. I got tied up at work. And, again, please stay if you want to.
One more, there was a letter from a man named Tom.
I can't hear you. I think I ruined my hearing as a young child, teenager.
I don't want to wear out my welcome, but a man named Tom Daniel asked for a letter to be read that he sent to you.
Yes, I do have it right here.
Great,
Yes, thank you for the reminder. I even pulled it out as part of it, so thank you. I apologize. It was Thomas Daniel. He wrote an email to me this afternoon that I actually was able to print before I left. He said, "My name is Tom Daniel. I'm a 50-year-old resident of 41 Sunset Drive. I'm responding to a letter I received regarding the new high school. I believe that money would be better spent fixing what we already have instead of trying to build a new building on wetlands. I also think that it would be greatly affect house values in the area around a new stadium. It would also cause a substantial hindrance from lights and noise from all activities coming from the stadium." And he said, "Unfortunately, I will not be able to attend tonight's meeting, but he would please like me to read the letter out loud to all in attendance." So again, Thomas, I read it, and I'm sorry that I didn't read it earlier. Anyone else? Yes.
Just, I think we've heard tonight that there's been a couple of, I think probably everybody in this group has received a letter or something that was put on their house or mailbox. I think a couple of you referenced that, maybe? And this letter references that?
Yeah, what letter?
And so I would think it'd be beneficial to this board if that letter or whatever's been circulated could come back here, because that would give us the opportunity as professionals and as a board to actually evaluate the claims and things that are in that and provide responses to it. So if that is out there, I think it'd be helpful for us as design professionals to know what that is.
We didn't send a letter. With the letter, people are talking about a letter that they received. Do you know who it came from?
I do.
Sharon, yes.
I have the letter. Would you like it?
Yes.
Yes, please.
I think we should make it part of the public record, probably.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. We can get someone to make a copy of it so she can get her copy back. Yes, thank you.
We're asked to identify who we are. As I say, people are coming in and out. I mean, I accept what this gentleman was saying, but I don't know who he is.
Right, okay. So
let's go around
So
the
what
table.
Bob, we will introduce ourselves, because again, I like I said, we introduced ourselves early on in the presentation. I realize there are new people coming in, so why don't we start on this end, and we'll go around and say our names and what our role is, okay?
Okay, but maybe they should go on the website, too. Thank you.
Well, we're on the website, but again, I understand what you're saying, Bob. Go.
I think you'll find the letter only has facts.
Okay. Thank you, Sharon.
Go ahead.
My name's David Gould. I'm with Tappe Architects, the project manager on this project.
No, design.
Chris?
What's that?
Chris?
I'm Chris Blesson, the principal at Tappe Architects, the architect for the project.
Mimi?
Mimi Biggs Highland. I am a resident and also currently a parent of a Burlington High School student.
My name's Terry Hartford. I'm a project manager with Dorn Whittier. Dorn Whittier was hired by this committee in the town to serve as their owner's project manager.
My name is Rachel Rincon. I'm an assistant project manager with Dorn Whittier.
I'm Gail Pinkham, Burlington resident.
And I'm Catherine Bond, chair of this current committee and also on the school committee.
I'm Chris Monaco, School Committee.
Oh, and vice chair.
Oh, and I'm vice chair of this committee. Yes.
Megan DeVoychek, School Committee.
Jeremy Brooks, school committee member.
Doug Davison, I'm a resident, and I'm representing the Ways and Means Committee.
I'm Martha Simon. I'm a community member of the School Building Committee.
Eric Conti, superintendent.
Thank you.
Bob Cuna, operations department for the schools.
All right. Thank you. All right.
Can I have a request? Could we ask Bob to give us all a copy of that letter? Bob has the letter now.
Oh, yeah, Bob?
I have
Could
it.
you, oh, yeah, Eric, could you get a copy to all of us, please?
Thank you.
Thank you. All righty.
Can
So,
I just say one thing quickly on that letter? If this gentleman is going to challenge the person that wrote that letter, then that should be done when that person is available in a public meeting. It shouldn't be done when, you know,
we
they
just
can't
want to make the
respond.
letter a public record because people are talking about it. No one's talked about challenging
He wanted to
anything.
respond to it. He did say he wanted to
Well,
challenge it to make sure
But
that
as
they were
public
legitimate.
record, right, we might, but,
But if he speaks, then the person should be able to respond.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
Bob, that's fine.
Thank you.
Sharon?
You can speak directly to me. I'll take ownership of it. Or me.
I didn't mean to challenge. I
Fine, we just wanted a copy of the letter because you all are talking about it. We haven't seen it. We want it for public record. Thank you.
Let's be clear. If I didn't hear it correctly, he did say he wanted to see if those were correct and challenge him. He did. So, sir, did you say that?
I think you're misinterpreting what Chris was
Yeah.
intending, which is we would like to see the letter so that we can respond to any questions or concerns. It's a matter of, I don't know what it says,
I understand that, but why are you speaking for him?
because
I'll speak. Can I speak through the chair?
Yes, so
Okay.
I'm going to let Chris respond with his own words, right? But again, really, we wanted to see the letter because you all have concerns that clearly are in that letter. We're not privy to that letter. Clearly, you came and spoke to us about some of that, but I think he wants to see firsthand what was in the letter, and I'll let him go ahead and respond to his response to asking for the letter.
Yeah, I'm not sure I said challenge, and if I did, I didn't mean challenge in the sense of like, you're wrong and things like that. I think it's if we want to have a project that's based on the available facts and information, and our firm has been hired to design things per code and to address all the concerns of the neighbors and everything like that. I just want to know what's out there. I want to know what people are saying. I want to know how to respond. Otherwise, I don't know what you're saying. And I just heard at least probably 3 or 4 people mention something that was delivered to them privately. And I think that, to foster a good dialogue and foster a good community response that can be on the website and directly to folks who want to have that interaction, I need to have the data. I need to be able to look it up. I need to be able to understand it. So that's the only request. And it likely is all factual and true and all of that. I'm not saying it's not. I just don't know what's in the letter to be able to tell you what you all are responding to and concerned about are things that are embedded in this project, because it is complicated. There's a lot of stuff here. So that's all. Just trying to put it on a fair level.
Thank you, Chris. All right, so why don't we go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the project schedule. So Terry, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, so as you're aware, we completed PDP back in November, moved into PSR, and we proposed a 4-month sort of schedule to narrow down the options. I'm well aware that, that's 2 meetings from now to come up with a preferred option, and there's obviously a lot we still have to consider, and I think today's meeting is going to be very important as some of these concepts have been advanced, taking into account a lot of questions and additional information that we've gleaned over the last couple of months. I'm not going to, take Chris's job because that's what he's going to be talking about. But I do think that as we move over the course of the next 2 months, the options need to get narrowed so that we can move towards a preferred solution, because ultimately that preferred solution will go to estimators who are third parties to estimate the cost of that, and we intend to do that over the summer in support of approaching, the school committee as a whole, the select board, and ultimately town meeting. So that's kind of where we are right now. I will highlight a couple of community events. There is the expo next week. We will be there on Wednesday evening. And we are also planning a community forum event on February 12th. One of the things that we are going to be, and this is in the presentation, but I'm just going to highlight it now, we will be releasing another video that kind of explains how we got to where we are today, which basically, we started with concepts, then we had actual options, and we narrowed those options down to give people a little more color on that. And at the same time, the school, and certainly school community members are familiar with something called Thought Exchange. Thought Exchange is kind of an AI-generated, it's not so much a survey, it allows people to basically express their opinions, and it kind of builds sentiment, and it's anonymous, and you can comment on other people's thoughts, you can provide your own thoughts. That will open up next week, and I think that's an important tool for people to express their opinions that we can then share with the committee and the public, that the will of the town is what a high school is, and I think all of us that are working in this business recognize that. I think Catherine's mentioned that this is a community building that we're trying to come up with the best solution for that entire community. So that's where we are schedule-wise. I think we still have a lot of work to do.
Yep, we sure do. All right.
Eric.
So, yes, Dr. Conti.
Terry, you're saying narrow it down, and I appreciate that. Can that be a little bit more concrete? Do you want us to have 2 or 3 or one site but couple options, or like what would be? We need to give you a task that you guys can actually
So as part of the work plan that we had before, we literally identified trying to eliminate an option tonight, which I don't actually think we're going to get to. Where I think Chris and I, and we've talked about this, would like to be at is by the next meeting, you're familiar with the matrix that we've talked about, that this is all this criteria, and over the course of the next month, we'll be filling that out so that you can kind of digest all of that. And what we would like is, by the next meeting, that you all are coming here with, these are our 2 to 3 best options, and that we are just focusing on those. Right now, we have 5, right? And then in the course of the next month, probably 2 months, we are narrowing that down to a single solution. That's what we would like to achieve.
Thank you, Terry. Anyone else have a question? Anyone online have a question? Okay, thank you. So let's go ahead and move on to the next item, which is Tape talking about the project and giving us an update.
Yeah, so, excuse me, tonight, you sure?
Just move it.
Don't touch the mic.
Been often
Not the
told.
whole meeting, I mean.
Just, your team can go ahead and occupy the table. So tonight we have the pleasure of hearing from the landscape architect team who's, so the umbrella of Tape Architects has several different consulting firms, and that ranges from everything from geotechnical, doing site explorations, test pits, borings, land survey, hazmat, all kinds of things, You've seen the reports of those things in the PDP. Oftentimes, we don't bring many of those consulting partners to public meetings, unless it's a specialty item like HVAC or something, which we talk about in more depth when we get into schematic design and also construction documents later on. But the lay of the land on this and where we are in preferred schematic report, you've seen site plans so far in the packages that we've sent. They've been coupled with all of the options. But tonight we have Ty Johnson from Warner Larson Landscape Architects, and he's going to walk through the site components of each of these so that you can get a more tuned-in detail around each of the options and how the sites correspond with that. We actually went through this in depth with the site logistics working group earlier this week, and so we want to kind of share that out a little bit more so you can get more detail on that. Following that, we've got the folks from CMTA here who are the sustainability leads for the project, and they're going to walk you through a sort of initial grab about what's possible with sustainability as it relates to the options currently on the table, and generally speaking as well, some of the high-level things that might guide some of the decision points. There are some sustainability metrics in that decision catalog that we gave you, and so we want you to hear that. There's also a sustainability working group that will work through a little bit more details with Jess and his team. But they're going to talk to you after that, and then to follow all of that, we'll give you an update on all of the options where they are today, and they've been kind of getting updated and refined along the way. So a lot to get through tonight, so buckle your seatbelts and ask, let's get through it, and then if you have questions, I think, just interrupt us along the way if you do. Ty's actually online, and so I'm going to turn it over to Ty for going through the site part.
Right, and actually, if you three could please introduce yourselves, just so everyone knows your names as well.
Sure. My name is Jess Farber. I'm a vice president with CMTA Engineering Consultants.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Joytika Bargo. I'm a building science engineer at CMTA.
And I'm Mike Pugh with CMTA and a senior mechanical engineer.
All right, thank you.
Ty?
Thanks, Chris. Sorry I couldn't make it tonight, but I appreciate you offering the video conference option. Hopefully next time I can make it in person. I'll try to keep things brief. We have 6 site plan options to show you tonight. 2 addition renovations, 4 new construction. And I just want to start with this slide just to get everyone's bearings. Burlington High School sits on a large property. However, there's tons of site constraints. And when we're doing our site planning, our feasibility site planning, we need to look at all those things to see where we can fit a building. We're looking at the environmental resource areas, topography, ledge, where the neighbors, land use adjacencies, and things like that. We also need to make sure that there's adequate parking, vehicular circulation, and obviously we want, the end result to be a beautiful school in a beautiful setting. So we're at a fun stage where we can study lots of different things, look at the site, where can we fit this building, how can we integrate a new building or a renovation with an addition into the property. So I'm just zooming in here so people can understand the quantity of parking that we're working with. This slide, we kind of broke it up into a couple areas on the site. You have 281 parking spaces here at the existing high school. And then if you go to the next slide, there's a student lot that's where we have 177 spaces. So essentially you have 458 parking spaces right now. So we need to make sure that any proposal is going to function in terms of parking and getting kids in and out of school, for buses, car drop-offs, and so forth. And then the next slide, we did a study of Corporate Way, and just for comparison, that has 443 parking spaces. So let's run through the options. I'll start with the ad reno. Like I said, we have 2 ad renos. And yeah, so AR2, well, we've been calling it AR2 because we whittled down our numbers. There was, I think, like people mentioned, there were 10 or 12 different options. So now we're really down to 2 ad renos that we feel could work well in a lot of different ways. So the first ad reno is essentially adding a new classroom wing on top of the existing drop-off loop, and then eliminating the middle section of the building, the existing building. Therefore, you're keeping the building mass on the bottom of the page, and then the building mass on the top of the page. So before I go further, let me just tell you that these plans, we've rotated everything to the right, 90 degrees. So north is now on your right. So that might, just want to make sure everyone's aware of that. The student parking lot is not colored in, but you can see it just to the right. On the right side, there's sort of a rectangular shape. That's where your student parking lot is. So in this scheme, you can see that the overall loop that goes around the building is unchanged. You can see that the student parking lot is unchanged, and that the classroom wing is built sort of outward. So as you're driving up, you would see sort of the end of the classroom wing. So what we did is studied how this would operate from a circulation standpoint and how buses would get there. And so what you're seeing here is in the orange arrows represents what we would see how parents could come in, drop off their kids and depart. And then the blue represents the buses. So we have 10 buses. And so what we like about this option is it really separates those two. It keeps the buses off completely separate, but yet they can both drop off at the front of the building. So the front of the building is represented with, there's a little black arrow in the middle. It's kind of right where the car drop off and the bus drop off come together. You can see the existing building, which is the building mass at the higher ground plane, the higher elevation would remain there in the white as well. So this is our first ad reno option. And in this case, we would be able to add roughly 57 parking spaces to this area. So you would have a net increase of parking as a result of this option. Just a couple other little minor things I'll mention. The existing building, which I'm not going to get in too much into the building uses today, but in most options we're seeing the gymnasiums would be restored, renovated, and then the existing the wing for admin, and then a pre-K early childhood would be included as well. So we're identifying a location where an outdoor early childhood play could occur on this plan as well. So let's go to the next ad reno option, which has a very similar setup in that we're kind of building the addition in the same, roughly the same location where that previous option was, but there's some differences here. And the classroom wing has sort of more of a V-shape appearance. It allows for a non-high school educational use in the lower level as well. And in this option, we can actually provide a good chunk of convenient parking. So the orange represents, just to remind you, is where the parent drop-off would go. We want to keep that queue as long as possible. We know there's a lot of cars that come in daily, and they need to be able to line up without interfering with other traffic. So we studied that, how that might work, and you can see how they would go in and depart. The buses also, professional bus drivers, we would tell them to drive around the back, and then they could line up around the back in this option as well. So there's 2 ad renos that are being studied. I think, from a site standpoint, they both work in our opinion, and then with minimal disruption outside the existing sort of circular loop around the building. So a lot of the pros and cons here are going to be related to the building program, how that's set up. But I won't dwell on that. Let's move on to some of the other options we've looked at. So the next slide, please. The corporate drive site plan. So here, the idea is that you would build a new building just north, in this one, north is up, which I think we're all familiar with. Cambridge Street's on your left. You would build a new building on the north half of the site. That's shown in sort of that beige color. And the existing building would be renovated as needed to stay in operation. So that's the white bar going across. So we looked at this as, how would circulation occur on a daily basis? How would the parking happen? Those are kind of our main, and then service, those are sort of the main things we're looking at here. And so what you're seeing here is the buses, again, would be separate from the cars. We like to keep those separate just from like functionality standpoint. And so those the buses would turn off first in blue, circle around between the buildings and drop off at a higher level, whereas the cars would come in further down the driveway and then turn into the parking lot, the existing parking lot, which we would probably want to reconfigure just so that we can make sure that those cars are in a longer queue as they're doing their drop off and not backing up into where the buses might be. So and I do have an update on the parking number. We think we can get about 240 parking spaces in this situation, not 208. So there was just a miscount earlier, but that's how we envision that site would work, just from like a pure vehicular circulation standpoint. There's obviously pros and cons with having the separate buildings and so forth, but let's move on to the next. So our first new construction. So this is looking at the existing student parking lot, which was identified as a possible location to put a building. Now, is it the best? Well, not sure. It creates a very, very strange shaped building. So there's some downsides there. But there is some upsides, and it's definitely something to consider. So we do have this as an option. And in this case, the existing high school, again, part of this plan is to remove that center portion of that existing high school. And so what this does is allows us to basically swap the student parking. We can move that over, or the parking that the new building is displacing can then move into that area. So what you're seeing is approximately the same amount of parking spaces as what you had before. And that's what, with a little bit of room left over. But again, how is this going to work from a functionality standpoint? How would the circulation work? Well, we think the buses could come in front of the building and just veer off to the side, have like a dedicated line, and then we would instruct the parent drop-off would actually go around the loop road to the left and then come in and have its own dedicated drop-off. So we think that can work. There's behind the building, it's pretty tight with a resource area, so we really don't want to have circulation back there. There's really not enough space. So this would kind of change the way things work now, but provide enough adequate parking and then a pedestrian connection to the existing existing gyms on the top of the page to the new school.
Can you stop for just one moment? If I recall, though, while we build this project, there's nowhere for the students to park, right? So that's where we have to find something creative to help accommodate this.
That's a great point. Yeah. So the ad rental, the two ad rentals, and then this one as well, all have some disadvantages in terms of phasing and temporary conditions where you'd have to get a little creative when it comes to things like parking. How would that work? There are obviously many different ways of handling it, different options, short of actually building like a brand new parking lot somewhere, but that is definitely a consideration. So the way this would work is obviously you would build the new building, complete that, occupy that, then take down the existing building, right? So that's sort of the phasing, and so, yeah, you have that conundrum for a period of time, whatever that might be, a year, where you would have to take that into account.
Thank you.
Sure. So the next site plan, one of the big advantages of building on top of the existing track is it eliminates the phasing concerns. So the existing track is, a nice flat location that has adequate space to put in a new school. So here's what that could look like. We have two different options to show you. And again, I wish the context showed you a little bit better here, but the gray line, the street on the bottom of the page, that's Cambridge Street. Okay, so that's going from south to north to the right. So that's high, obviously. And then the entry into the property is an existing condition. So we're not proposing any changes there. You would basically come in at that exact same location. In fact, all the options that's not something we've targeted as something that needs to change. That existing entry will continue to be the existing entry. So when you come in on this property, obviously you go down the existing road, and then this is how potentially you could fit a building into the new track position. So what we're doing here, if everyone can see okay, is the parents, which is in the the orange, the sequence for dropping off in this case, they would actually go beyond the school, turn at the existing drop-off loop or somewhere else, come back, and then drop off their children on the right side of the street. Those children would then walk to the school from the street. We'd have a dedicated drop-off. Whereas here, the buses in this plan are coming in where the blue arrow is, and they would have a dedicated sort of safe bus zone to drop off at the front of the school. That could be restricted really only to buses at any time. And then your parking is set sort of to the south of the building, to the back of the building there, with a service area back there as well. So here you see we have approximately 100 spaces, 97 shown on this site plan, for parking at this site. And this does not impact the student lot at all. And again, the building would sit at the sort of the lower, it's basically at the track level. So visually, when you're on Cambridge Street, it would appear sort of on the low side. So even a 3-story building at that point would appear to be, 1.5, 2 stories from the Cambridge Street side. So this is the first of the two options for new construction on the track. So let's look at the next one.
And Ty,
it's a little bit different.
Ty, just to interrupt you, the distance from the student lot to, say, the front door of kind of both of these options on Varsity Field is similar to what the lot is today to the front door of the building. I think we've measured that out, and it's about the same. So.
Yeah, that's a great point. The student lot's nice, centrally located for this location. So the second option, a little bit more of a condensed architectural floor plan that keeps a courtyard for letting in natural light to the classrooms. Here we're showing a difference here is the buses would actually come into the property in the south, the back, and drop off in a separate location. So that bus entrance may be actually on the left side of the building, and then the cars would do the same thing as we had shown in the previous version, where they're actually going to loop around, turn back, and then they would drop off on the right side of the street. And then we'd have plenty of paths to get to the front door of the building. So a nice thing about this is it prevents, the students don't have to basically cross where the buses drop off. whereas in the previous one, they did. So in this option, it's a similar configuration where it sits at the same elevation as basically where the track and field sit today. So it'll appear low on Cambridge Street. However, the design on this one is such that there would be a second-story exit point, or basically the appearance of the second story from Cambridge Street would actually have sort of a architectural appearance and have access in and out of the media center from that area. So there was just a little nod to that on this plan. But basically from an elevationally standpoint, you could walk, you would basically be at the same level from Cambridge Street to that entrance on the south on the page, closest to Cambridge Street. So that's the second new construction option on the track. And so let's get into why don't we talk about this idea that people have brought up of this putting the field, basically relocating the field to this location between, renovated parts of the existing high school. So this is you can see how that would fit. It's basically the exact same size as what's on the other side, shifted over here. Now, it's some interesting grading happening here. So in this option, you're seeing the track would sit sort of at a mid-level. So it would sit lower than the upper building, but that the track grade would actually sit at the same level as the second story of the gym building. So you could have direct access from the building on top out to the track to be at the same level. And then on the side, on the high side, down on the page, is where you would put spectator seating, because it would fit nicely into the slope. So you would basically provide, in this case, you could provide a slope down to the track, spectator seating, a press box if you wanted to. That's where that would go, right at the 50-yard line. So that actually fits in there nicely. Now, in this case, we also are studying the possibility of parking under the track. So that's obviously an expensive proposition, but it's been talked about, considered, and we looked at what that could provide for the project. And right now, just in this graphic, you can see in blue, it's a little hard to make out. Just underneath the green area you can see some blue marks. So that's roughly 164 parking spaces right there that would be accessed from two locations. The location on the plan west would enter it at the lower level. Yeah, and that's right. So you'd be coming in at an elevation, a low elevation under the track at that point, and then there'd be another egress point to the right of the building, top of the page. But that's how that would work. And here you're seeing the loop road is unchanged, same width, same location. And this is just to get a visual on how this might fit into this location. So we did a couple studies I'd like to share with you on this track. So the first study we did was we drew our architectural section to understand the elevation of the track relative to, I believe that's 48 Sunset, that house there. So we took architectural license and tried to draw the house to approximately the right height. We know it's the correct distance though. So, and you can actually make out it's in a very light dashed black line of the existing building is also identified on this plan. So the existing building is obviously very close to the existing travel lane and parking. So that would go away to make room for the track. And so what you can see is the track is 23 feet wide, the track itself is 23 feet wide. The D zone is actually much wider to get to the field. So But you can see, 33 feet from the edge of the track to that existing travel lane. And we see that as an opportunity to build, we could mound that up. We could plant a heavy evergreen screen. We talked about putting, a solid wall, a solid fence, maybe the scoreboard's there. But that just keeps that separation from the property line. So you can see where the property line is. It's 32 feet away from the parking area. It's also obviously an option to put solid fence on the property line as needed. But noise travels in a straight line. We think that there's opportunities to basically from the field itself, to the house, which sits 11 feet lower, opportunity to create buffer in that location. And let's just go to the next slide. So we did a study on photometric lighting, which is basically a program that will identify how many foot candles of light are hitting the ground from the sports lights. So in the sport lighting industry, these guys are really, really aware of this, because anytime they ever put sports lights up, they need to prove how their lighting is cut off. So the light on the field needs to be 50-foot candles to play a game. But then the goal is for the light to cut off as fast as possible. And so what you're seeing here is 4 light poles, approximately where they would be located. They would be 70 feet high. And what you're seeing here is where the red line is, the dashed red line represents where the 0-foot candle line is. In other words, there's no additional light anywhere in the red as a result of those sports lights. So the red line we like to see, we always want to make sure that's cut off by the property line. And in this case, it certainly is. And we overlay, obviously the building would obviously stop the light faster as well. And this study did not take into account that the building is actually sitting higher down on the page. So when and if we go to the next level of detail, we would certainly look at those very specifically. And then this was a conservative estimate in terms of lighting the track. So tracks are pretty much not lit for track use. However, a lot of communities elect to add a few sort of lights just to keep the track lit during off hours so the community can walk around it. So this is actually what that is showing. But if we would eliminate that, if that's not something the community wants, that would marginally move that red line inbound if we're really just lighting that green rectangle. So these are studies we do on any track and field. We do it, we especially overlay it with the neighbors, the property lines, so everyone can see. And if and when this does move forward, we would definitely take this to the next detailed level. But I just wanted to show this tonight. I think that's it for my portion of the presentation. Yep. So do you want to switch to the next, or however you guys want to handle it?
Thank you. Just if you want to add anything to it, Chris, and then from the members, if anyone has any questions for him, we'll go ahead and have those questions, and then we can move to the next.
Yeah, I think that is a good overview of the site response to each of the options. So I think we can take it to your committee and then keep going if there's no questions.
Anybody from the committee have any questions, Martha?
I just wanted to ask on all of the first 3 options that you were looking at, the AR1 and AR2, which are 2 different ways that we might renovate and add to the current building. It does preserve this upper part, and it preserves sort of the lower part. Can you explain the reason why you're demolishing that center part and what the purpose of that is? And would it also be demolished for the other new options?
Go ahead.
Great question. Chris
Ty,
is probably best to answer.
I think we'll be answering that when we talk about the architecture in a little bit. So the questions right now are really focused on the site response. So I do have an answer to that.
All right, good. Thank you.
Dr. Conti?
I guess I kind of want to put it out to the committee. 10 Corporate Drive, again, was something that I looked at, that we went and, again, trying to be as creative as possible. I didn't count parking spots, but it looks like even in the existing building, there's fewer spots than we have on this current site, which are around 458, according to you all who counted them. So I'm going to say that is a fact, so no opinions about how many parking spots we have. It is a fact that there are fewer sites in the existing 10 Corporate Drive, and if we were to build a building to house the program that we need just for the high school, right, Chris, that doesn't move any of the auxiliary, central office, preschool, anything else like that. So just to build out the high school program at 10 Corporate Drive, we reduced the parking by over 200 parking spots, which is a problem now.
Yes.
So that site, I would say, my perspective, just isn't big enough. Not that it's not a good idea, not that if the building were another 100,000 square feet, it might work. I'm just saying the factual nature of this, the number of parking spots, fact, again, the opinion might be that's the best thing, but the facts are we don't have enough space to put the cars that we currently have or the program that we currently have at that site. I just want to make sure I'm looking at that correctly, given what other people are thinking.
Thank you, Dr. Conti. Anyone else in the room? And anyone online who, sorry, Mimi.
I also have a concern about 10 Corporate Drive. Excuse me. I wasn't able to be here on December 12th, but I have certainly watched the video very carefully and listened to all the abutters' concerns. But my concern, in addition to what Eric just said, my concern about 10 Corporate Drive is going with that. There is no plan in place for the commuting the kids and the faculty between the two sites. And I, for one, am not okay with just on the hope or the whim that some busing or alternative transportation system can be put in place. Because if it doesn't go well, the people most harmed by it are the students who will be late to classes. And it's at the beginning of most classes that instruction about, rubrics, homework assignments, expectations, not just for that lesson, but for the next week, whatnot, occurs. And to put the onus on students to make up for what they miss every time they are late is a really troubling concern for me. And I would only be able to lend my support to 10 Corporate Drive if both the parking situation and equally, if not more so, the infrastructure to guarantee that students and faculty can easily and in a timely way get to and from the two sites was in place. And in short of that, not only would I not support it, but I would encourage other town meeting members not to support it, because I just think that is gambling too much of the children's education.
Thank you, Mimi. And I think there were a lot of concerns with safety, finding a way to cross the street safely. So anyone online? Jeremy? I'll go with you first, and then I'll go to the people online.
So again, I'd echo the concern, 10 Corporate Drive. I see a challenge with traffic just getting into the site, because now you're going to back up traffic in the main thoroughfare of the town, going both ways as people are trying to enter the site. Additionally, leaving this building here in its current state, the school committee has to vote to do what they need to do with the building, number one, so that encumbers a cost. If the town retakes this building, it creates another large financial challenge, in that the same existing challenges we have here with the 20% rule that'll be triggered if we make improvements will happen again with the town. So now you're signing up for another $200 million challenge by using this site also. So I have concerns really mostly from a fiscal perspective, and then the impact to just mobility through the town at two key times during the day when people are trying to get to work and come home. So I'd have to see a little more on this to understand how the mobility impacts are, and then we'd have to understand the financial burden we'd encumber by keeping the site here, or what the town would really want to do with the existing site.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room? And online? Who is it? Melissa, yes.
I just wanted to ask if we keep some of the programs on the old site, so that north by the BCAT, BCC central office, we wouldn't need to replicate that parking. So I don't know if we've calculated like how much parking central admin and those sites need to be able to kind of subtract that from the needs of just the high school.
Can I?
Want to go ahead and answer that? If you have any.
I think the simple math on this would be that the proposed parking for 10 corporate right now is 208. We might, final further analysis, you might be able to squeeze, a handful more out of it. But what's the current staff number for the high school?
125?
Okay, so 100 plus of that number would be used just for staff at the high school. And then you have all of the, seniors and juniors that would drive to the school. And so you're going to be parking most of your students elsewhere, I would guess, in that regard. So just based on the 200, and that doesn't even start to talk about the other components like visitors and things like that, so.
Yep, Melissa, we talked about this in the group. Central office staff, I think that was your question. It's approximately 50 spaces, right? Including, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's the direct answer that you're looking for. But it doesn't change the math.
Did that answer your question, Melissa?
Yep.
Okay, good. All right, anybody else online? Okay. You want to go to the next?
Yeah. So we'll move on to some fun talk about sustainability. I'll hand it over to Jess and his team from CMTA, and they'll run through a few slides. And, shifting gears just a little bit, all parts of a project are sustainable in nature. We need to think about that from us having a good conversation with Mimi about, native species and plantings and stuff like that, which will be brought into the project as a layer later on. But right now we want to talk to you about some of the sustainability approaches that really kind of affect the building and might have influence on the way that you think about these options. So.
Thanks, Chris. So we're going to go through a few slides here. A lot of these we presented at the original interview we did last year or whenever that was. So a little bit of a recap of what we've talked about before and a little bit of a deep dive into some of these topics we've been talking about tonight. Uh-oh. I didn't do anything.
You did something.
Hold on a second while we fix our technical
Stand
issue.
by. Suspense is killing me. Okay. Oh, I hit the wrong one. There you go. That was my fault. I apologize. I'll take responsibility for that. My first time using a computer. So, sustainability. What we want to hit on here. There's a series of steps we take when we're looking at the buildings. Obviously, there's a lot of options here you're considering with ad reno, new construction, and they all have an impact in terms of these features. And so the building orientation and massing has a component, so whether it's a two-story building or whether it's a long bar will have an impact on energy efficiency and daylighting and glare and thermal comfort, all those kinds of things. So we look at all of those options. Same with the building envelope in terms of the insulating values. All that plays a part into that. But what we want to start talking about with you here tonight is the systems that go into the building and what that impact is, because there's a lot of sustainability features that come with the HVAC that we have to put in, the heating systems and things like that. So we're going to focus a little bit on the MEP, what we call the MEP systems, the HVAC and all of that kind of stuff, and what that means. This is more of a primer. We're not trying to make decisions necessarily, but get you start thinking about these things. And as we get deeper into the project, we'll dig deeper into the questions that need to be asked and the answers that will be needed to move forward to get the right choices here, okay? So again, high performance systems is where we're going to focus. In your existing building, for those that have had the pleasure of going into the boiler room, you have these gigantic old boilers from the 70s. They are beyond their useful life. They are natural gas fired boilers. So when you think of carbon emissions, that's what that means, that those natural gas boilers are a direct impact on on-site emissions for this particular building. So that's something to think about in terms of what do we want to do with our new systems? Do we want fossil fuels or not? And then, in terms of how much air conditioning and heating, where do we need to do all of that? So you've got old systems here. They've been maintained as best as you can, but they're definitely at the end of their useful life. So something to be thinking about when we do add reno, likely all this stuff is getting reworked anyway, that you would need to be doing in any portion of a project. There's a lot of electrical power distribution within the building. We have three 3,000 amp services, and there's been some damage to those over the years, as you can see in the picture. So obviously we would want to address that infrastructure in whatever we do to renew this building. This is a slide we presented at the interview. How does your building stack up in terms of carbon emissions? So I think it was even written in your energy efficiency, Town of Burlington energy efficiency, your climate action plan, that we knew that this high school was the biggest emissions source of the town. And this is what that shows you there, is we use a term called EUI, that's energy use intensity. So it's like miles per gallon of your car. It tells you how good or bad the building performs relative to your peer group of buildings. So you're right in the middle of that pack of buildings we've benchmarked across Massachusetts. So 64, not a great number, not a terrible number. Could be better, will be better when we get done, but it is 22% of Burlington's building energy consumption. So keep that in mind when we're making these decisions. Do we want to solve that problem or not as part of this project? And just like anything else, just like with all the sites and all the different building orientations and options, there's all kinds of competing priorities when it comes to selecting these systems. Again, I'm not getting into the weeds of this with you folks tonight, but these are the questions that will be asked: is what is important to you when it comes to selecting systems for your building? Is energy efficiency the most important? Is first cost the most important? Is life cycle cost the most important? We'll ask all of these questions in a survey to get a feel for where this committee is at, and helping to then say, this option checks all these boxes, this option checks these boxes. So then again, are we making the best choice based on the information we have? So that'll all come as we get into the next steps of the project. Any questions so far? Okay, good. So then when we look at HVAC, again, that is, if you think about emissions of this building, the bulk of that emissions is the HVAC, the heating of this building. It is an old building. It takes a lot to heat it. It's a massive structure. It just takes a lot to heat a building of this size. We will want to know, are fossil fuels off the table in terms of consideration for any project, whether it's a new building, whether it's add reno, whatever we do we want to eliminate fossil fuels in this building or any other site? Something that we have to get the answer to. We've assumed yes at this point for the purpose of the conversation, but it doesn't mean it can't be considered at some point if that's what we want to do. Doesn't matter to us. We want to make sure every option is considered, just like with the site. We want to make sure we've done the due diligence to make the right choice with all the options on the table. So there's several different ways to do HVAC when it comes to all electric type of systems. So there's air source based systems like you might have at your house. There's ground source or geothermal based systems that are much more energy efficient, but there's a cost that comes with that. First cost, but a better life cycle cost. So we'll get into all of that. And there's hybrids between all of that. So that's kind of the framework of what we're looking at. I'm gonna let Mike talk a little bit about maybe 3 high level options, just again, get your mind thinking about what we're talking about so we can continue this conversation in the future. Mike?
Thanks.
So we've got three, as just mentioned, three higher level, higher performing options, and they are all electric, as he noted. We've got some pros and cons, and that ties back to that spider chart that just had a couple slides ago. The first one, the variable refrigerant flow, VRF, that typically, it's a lower first cost, a little more on the operating costs, some pros and cons there. But overall, it's, as far as the efficiency of the three that we're going to look at, it is at the lower end. But again, these are all electric. They are high efficiency options, but this would be the lower of the three.
And we do see these being popular in school design.
Yes.
So all of these are very common in any type of school design that we would do.
Yeah, that's a good point that, these are common high efficiency options for schools. The next is geothermal, as Jess mentioned, and this includes heat pumps in the classroom, or heat pumps in the building. It exchanges the heat with the ground. That's the heat sink and heat source. It does not use groundwater. It's just exchanging heat with the ground. So a good distinction there, that we're not pulling water out of the ground to use that. It's just, it has piping that goes into the ground and exchanges heat. That does have a higher first cost. There's a premium to that. It is a lower, it'll have the best energy use intensity, EUI, the best performing, and it also is a very low maintenance option. So, and then the third option is a hybrid. Again, it's using heat pumps and a very, very efficient heat pumps. And with the hybrid option, there's some, a portion of it is geothermal using the groundwater like we mentioned, but then there's also some that is air source based heat pump, and having that hybrid option, that brings the cost down a little bit. It brings the efficiency down a little bit, but it also, when, as we get further into it and see what the budget is for the MEP systems, having this option sometimes allows it to bridge as efficient system as possible while still meeting the budget.
Can I add just one little comment? So for the committee's information, when we've done all of the cost breakouts right now, the PDP estimates, we've taken the assumption that ground source heat pumps would be kind of a major element or driver of this. And so for reasons that I think we're about to talk about in terms of inflation reduction and kind of incentives that are out there that help pay for a building, that is a decision point that it's not made for you, but it does have a bit of a higher first cost, and that's why we wanted to capture that in these estimates early on. And if the committee is looking for ways to bring down costs, but also not take part in some incentives and things like that, that's a balancing act. We'll show you along the way the impact on the building, but I just wanted you to know that we're trying to account for keeping your options open and making it available for the maximum amount of incentives you can have later. So,
Catherine?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Mimi.
No, I was just going to say, I would like to know if somebody here can get the information from Arlington High School and Billerica High School, what options they went with, because I think anecdotally it would be important to hear what the staff, students, and families at those respective high schools have to say about how warm it is, how well ventilated it is or not. So I would like that kind of information.
Yeah, I agree, Mimi, because I know even some of the schools, when we were looking at Fox Hill and we did some tours, and it was very enlightening. Again, some of them were 5 and 7 years old, so still young, but it was interesting to hear what the teachers had to say about how hot some places were and cool, and what was working and what wasn't, and not only for heat and cooling, but also the space that was built that I think we all learned lessons from by touring, so I appreciate you bringing that up, Dr. Conti.
So Terry or Chris, I sort of have a chicken egg question here. So we're studying options. You're going to do a survey. We're going to put in those options, and then those options may create a LEED certified building or not create a LEED certified building.
It'll all be LEED.
I know there's something else besides LEED, or does this committee say we want a LEED gold at a minimum, and then you fit the systems into the, you say, in order to have that designation, you need to do at least this. So I guess I'm trying to, or have we already decided, Catherine, I might have missed it, that we voted on, we want, do we pick the standard, or do we study everything and say, given all the other things that we want, or price, or whatever, that this is the standard that we're going to achieve? And I'm not sure I'm asking that question well, but I'm just trying to better understand that.
I can. So one of the things that the Sustainability Working Group has been working on for quite a while now is what's called a basis of design document. And it's another acronym is, we call that BOD, if you ever hear me say that again, basis of design. And then OPR is owner's project requirements. Jess's team we have that already started, and they're looking at that, gonna chime back in with the Sustainability Working Group. We actually have a meeting tomorrow to dive a little bit more deep on some of these things, but we're gonna put that document back in front of this building committee as a whole, because we want you to adopt that. In that document has specific language about we aspire to be LEED Gold or LEED Silver, or certain things need to be taken care of during the process, and that owner's project requirements and basis of design document is the kind of thing that is like the North Star for these decision points, that it's not telling you how to do it, but it's saying we value X, therefore please make sure the chosen option can do that. And then it's our job to say there's 3 different ways to do that, and here they are. One is good, another one's better, and then another one's best, and they have different cost implications, but all of them should meet this requirement, right? And so that's our goal, is to bring that before you guys so you can tell us exactly how far you want to go in sort of the LEED rating systems and all of that.
I'm guessing we're going to follow a similar process like we did with the Fox Hill project. And
I was just wondering if I was missing,
No,
if we had
I-
made that designation already?
no, we have not.
From a finance standpoint, I would just say that it's important, as we talk about those, I think, to tie real dollars so that people know what, if it's $20 $20 million between option A and B, or $1 million, that's a huge difference.
Sure.
And before we get to LEED Gold versus, what are the dollar amounts? What are we looking at? What would we be excluding, or, what are the options?
Yeah, I think the estimate.
Same thing. I think it's real easy to say we don't want to do any, any fossil fuels, and I'm okay with that, unless it costs $20-30 million more to avoid fossil fuels.
Sure.
And then I think as a community, we should decide that we're willing to spend that much money.
Right.
And I know incentives, all of that went into the decision-making process and what we did over with the Fox Hill project too. So I think we need the whole picture.
Yeah, and I think that's what the process is designed to do, is to, again, make sure that you have all that information to know that we're doing the right thing here, right? So what I would add to Chris's comments about the systems is that the new stretch code that's out there. We're going to talk more about this in a minute, but the codes have all updated semi-recently, the past couple of years, right? And so we have a pretty aggressive set of requirements. So if we undergo, especially if it's a new building, we don't have any choice, right? We have to meet that. So you will easily get to LEED, if not LEED Silver, without doing anything, just because of the requirements that we're bound to design this building. And if it's a major renovation, if we're doing a major overhaul and triggering all these code updates, same thing. You're going to be kind of walking yourself down that path just because of the level that we have to deploy just because of the project, right? So I think it's just part of the equation, I think, anymore.
And Megan, you had a question?
Thank you. I have a sort of technical question about the hybrid air source geothermal.
Sure.
So having the 2 systems, if something happens to one system, would the second system, let's say the air source system, would that be able to meet the cooling and heating needs of the high school, or would they need to be functioning together at all times? Would it be a backup?
Depends how much money you want to spend. So generally, I would say you would need both. Okay. So we propose that option to help manage costs. That's really why that option's on the table. So it helps us, because the geothermal well field is the most expensive thing. That's where all the money is going to be. Drilling all those wells in the ground is where the money is. So if we can reduce the number of wells and buy something else to help supplement that, then that helps manage cost, and we just have to pay a little more energy for it, but that'll all be outlined to you. But it's all part of one system, So the geothermal piece would take care of the building 85% of the time. It's really when you get to these extreme heat or extreme cold where that other system would really kick on and help kind of to bridge that gap, I guess, in terms of capacity.
Okay.
So they're not both needed at the same time, but at some point in time you would need both to get to those extreme days. But for the most part, the well field would take care of all your needs.
Okay, and the air source would not be able to take care of those needs if there's
Not on its own,
wrong with the well?
no.
Okay.
It's like 80% would be on the well field, 20% would be air source, just to that. And we pick that number because that helps maximize incentive. So if we start going too far the other way, then we start losing our leverage of mass save or Inflation Reduction Act potentially. There's other things out there of how we can help offset some costs.
Okay, great.
So
Thank
there's a
you.
balance to all that, yep.
Mimi?
Yeah, would it be possible for your team to address the concerns raised by the abutters in regards to flooding, floor grade plan? There was, we had people attest to needing second sump pumps, dealing with frequent basement flooding. What would building these wells result in potentially for the homeowners in those surrounding areas? I think we have to address those concerns.
Sure, I can give a start to that. I'm not sure I can completely answer it tonight, but I can give you the kind of my gut reaction to that is, so the wells they're what we call closed loops. There's no communication of water from the ground in and out of the system. So it's just, think of it as a big battery that we're putting underground. It's just water moving through those pipes in and out of the building. So there's no water movement back and forth in terms of that. Obviously, if we encounter water, we would see that during the drilling process of while the rig's out there drilling into the ground, water's coming out of the ground. There's a lot of restrictions in place of how they would do dewatering and how the contractor would have to take care of, like we did a project in the town of Hopkinton, and we dug big ditches and big trenches for the water to collect to, so it didn't leave the site. So there's all kinds of soil, erosion control planning that does go into that's bound by the design. So that's how it would be dealt with through that piece.
Sorry.
Can I just follow up by saying, I really think it's important if the website could address those kinds of concerns, because we need the support of the community, and particularly the residents who live in that area who are impacted. And I'm sure at the community forum, they can come and speak for themselves about what their concerns are in regards to this. But I think the biggest issues that we talk about here, if there's a way to encapsulate it on the website so people can hear from your teams, because you're the authorities that people look to for guidance on this, and even a general summary of what LEED Gold versus LEED Silver, what those designations mean. I think for the Fox Hill website, wasn't it at one point that went up? But for this one as well, because this is what people are paying attention to right now, I think it would go a long way towards at least answering questions, if not allaying concerns.
Sure, and we can work with Chris and figure out how to populate what you need for that. No issue.
One just point to note on the ground source wells, if the committee was going to pursue that at any level, there is a there is a study, like a feasibility process, and I think, Jess, can you just mention that, because I think that would highlight any like if there are risks to abutters or something like that. We'll find it during that process of exploring to make sure the site can handle that. But Jess, you can.
Right, so not too far down the road, if the decision is to proceed with that concept or that idea and determine if it's feasible, a test well will need to be drilled on the site, and that would happen while we're designing the project during schematics, so we have that information to tell us, is it feasible? What are the issues we're going to encounter? And we could, at that point, what these are typically like 500 feet deep wells, so they're very deep. And so that test well tells us what the geology is from grade all the way down to the bottom. So we understand the capacity, I guess, of the earth rather to push heat in and suck heat out of is really what we're trying to get to. And we would, at that point, understand the water situation as well, at least at that point in time, of what the groundwater would be, to get an idea of how to mitigate that and through the design. So that would need to happen, sooner than later, if we want to proceed with that.
Okay, thank you. Chris?
I'd just like to echo what Mimi said, that I think from what you described, it wouldn't be a problem at all. I mean, digging it, you might have to do some mitigation, but once in place, it wouldn't be a
Correct.
problem.
It's covered up, yeah.
Yeah, but I totally agree with her that this is a community project, and we need a lot of buy-in from everyone. So to address that sooner rather than later and put it on the website, I just want to
we're happy to
echo what she said.
happy to help support that.
Thank you.
But it is a construction activities when you would see, to your point, when you would see the situation occur. But once it's built, it's backfilled, covered up, pave a parking lot over it, or put a ball field over it, or whatever, and then it's underground.
Great, thank you.
Martha?
Talking about regular excavation. So you're just talking about those.
So if actually, we can address other questions later, but we want to just get questions from the committee. I'm sorry.
So you answered my first question, so you have not yet done a test drill?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. This is the first we're presenting this to you.
Yeah,
Right,
and is there a timetable of when that might happen, or do you wait until we have fewer options, or?
Yeah, I think once we get out of the next phase into schematics is when we would entertain doing that. So I think we would need to know the preferred option, because we would want to know where the well field would go relative to where the building is going to be. That well that would get drilled would be used in the final product. We just don't want to drill it and throw it away.
Yeah.
So we want to maintain that somewhere. So we need a little more information to get to that.
And through the chair, my other question, I think might be what Maureen Carr was just alluding to. You talked about there'd be this test well and the construction would be all finished. But it's my understanding that there won't be any interchange, you said. The water won't go in and out of this.
Correct.
But it will take up space.
Correct.
And so I don't need a specific answer right now, but I would hope that as this goes forward, you would share information, there would be detailed information so that we understand that if it displaces, this 2 feet of water, where's that water going to go?
Right.
Or it won't displace, because I've heard different opinions about geothermal well fields.
Okay.
It's better if it's on a wetland, I've heard, or is it better if it's on ledge? And depending on where we actually do the building, you could have one or the other. So
Correct.
I'm just want to encourage you and your team to be very explicit about all that information so that people can see that either it is going to impact, their basements, or it isn't, because engineers have figured out how to do this over the last 20 years. So that kind of information needs to be shared.
Absolutely.
Thank
No,
you.
we can do that. I think probably what I would propose is that, I think it was mentioned earlier, we want to narrow down to a fewer options instead of where we're at. So I think once we get to that next step, or maybe there are 3 options or whatever we think the next step is, we could probably start looking at, okay, in this option, we need this much area. Here's where, just like we're doing with the site, it could go here, 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 and to make sure we understand the pros and cons, get any feedback we need. We don't like it here because of this, or, to get that feedback, and then we can start to shortlist what that looks like, and then give you that detail that you need.
I
at that
agree. It's
level.
how is it going to be redispersed underground? Because you think about it when I know in our neighborhood, a bunch of people cut trees down and didn't necessarily ask permission.
Right.
Person down at the bottom of the hill, now their backyard floods when it didn't flood before, and if all the people hadn't cut all the trees down,
Right.
which drink all the water,
Right.
there wouldn't be an issue at the bottom.
Right.
So I totally understand people's concern about, what's going to happen.
I think
right?
I definitely understand from this evening the issue surrounding the flooding and groundwater, so we will definitely take that into consideration, any option we present next time.
And Madam Chair, again, I think we have to be cautious of the negative, and I think people are clearly concerned about it. It may also be that the site work we do at this building makes the situation better.
Yeah.
So I think we have to make sure that we're looking at this all factually, and, I wasn't around here in the 70s, but again, there are obviously lots of retention areas that are now full of vegetation, and maybe the work that we do actually improves the situation. So I think we just need to look at all possibilities, we need to study it, and then we need to present those facts out there. But again, we have to certainly be cautious, understanding that water is a major issue, but again, we're looking to make the situation not just, I would say one of the goals should be to make it better.
Wait, you're out of order. I'm sorry, you're out of order. We can have you talk about things like that at another community meeting. I'm sorry. Dr. Conti, continue.
No, I just think that it's an opportunity as well for some site work that might be much needed to help as well. So.
And maybe you have an example of another school that you worked at where there was a flooding issue that the building, whatever was built, may have helped it, right? I think Dr. Conti's right. We're talking about a lot of negatives, but there could be some positive that comes out of it too. So I just want to make sure that we address all of that. As well. We can put plants in, for example.
Any
all kinds of
option, it doesn't matter which one we do, they're all bound by having a stormwater management plan that brings in the DEP and the town and the Conservation Commission, and it's all designed with, various detention ponds, how we get water off the site through drainage. Like, that's part and parcel to any building that we have to do, and we are bound by that. And so we have not done that yet because we don't have an option yet, and so we can't come up with a design to do that. But when we get to that stage, that's absolutely what we're going to have to do. And so, I understand the concern. Water is water's water. Nobody wants it in their house. I'm pretty certain of that. I do know that a project of this size is we trigger all of these requirements to meet state, whether it's codes, laws, I mentioned DEP, and so all of that's going to be done in due course.
Thank you. Martha?
I also think that you brought up a good point, which is that the stormwater is one of the issues that neighbors are understandably concerned about and have had problems with for years. But there are actually so there's sort of three different issues. We have stormwater management, so the water that's running off the site. We also have wetlands, which are where the groundwater comes up above. And I actually spent some time this week talking to our conservation director about some of these issues, because there's also wetlands around the stadium site that we need to be proactive if we were to build there, for example. And the third area is floodplains. So when I talked to the floodplain people, they didn't have the wetland maps. And when I spoke to the wetland people, they didn't have the floodplain maps. So there are three different issues about water on this campus. And all of them could flood people's basements, but all of them have very clear requirements and restrictions, as you were saying. And I'm just wondering and want to encourage that, have we already determined, like there's new FEMA flood map insurance maps that are coming out like this week. And have we already in our, I forget which initials you're using, but the current designs you've shown us, are those already built or designed so that you know how high up you would have to elevate if we build NC1 or if we build NC4 and those kinds of things? So I'm kind of assuming, because that's your job, that's what you guys do, but I think at some point we will have that conversation. But I wanted to highlight this because there are three different issues that we have on this site around water. And just to repeat, stormwater management, floodplains, and wetlands. So I feel like we've gotten a lot of important information today, and those are all things that I'm expecting that we'll hear more about as we go forward. So,
thank you, Martha. And like I said, I think Terry really explained it. We follow the process and go through, what the regulations are and make sure that we're doing something that's not going to be harmful and following the regulations. And it's a process. I mean, we're kind of early as far as that's concerned, but, I know people have their concerns, and I want them to voice their concerns, but I think at this point, we need to talk about, again, there could be some positive result of what we do, but we're certainly going to make sure we follow all the regulations to keep people from having a negative result, right? Did you want to say something too?
Yeah.
Chris?
I think the floodplain, wetland, and groundwater, stormwater, all of that is not Jess and his team. And so want to kind of refocus us a little bit on the sustainability side. But to that end, I will tell you that the objective of doing the ANRAD with the Conservation Commission was to do that analysis. When we interviewed, it was like almost a year ago now, we brought to this committee at that time site analysis that was identifying the new FEMA maps that we've already known about. And so we have been layering that in. We want to stay away from flood zones. You don't want to be inside of those at all. There's also river setback, the stuff on the back side of this building, the gym side, is actually considered a river, and so there's river setbacks that the back end of the building sits in, and so we're very aware of that. That's a civil engineer issue, and the concerns are very valid. We have a project right now that we're reducing stormwater runoff and managing it on site by 67%, and also at the same time doing a series of hydrogeological groundwater mounding analysis. So that what that means is when the water ponds, it creates a sort of mound right there that kind of raises groundwater, and then it dissipates as the groundwater moves in the ground. All of this is stuff that we can do once we have an option, right? So once we know what the option is, we can tell you how we address and make better all of the water issues that you already kind of know about. And so the water issues don't drive the choice of the project. The choice of the project drives where we go with the engineering that controls the issues. And so I just want to make sure you know that like we get that and we understand that, and that's a civil engineer. You'll hear from them in due course, right? So don't get too wrapped up on it. We're hearing it, we understand it, and I just want to kind of redirect back to Jess and his team on the sustainability of the building. So.
Absolutely.
Back to that.
Thank you.
Just quickly touching on the life cycle costs, what you're seeing in the yellow dotted line is the cost associated with installing a VRF system and then the ongoing operating cost. So that's why it's scaling up. And in the dotted blue line is for a ground source heat pump option. So you are seeing the first costs are higher because it's a more premium system. And with just mass save incentives applied for both of those systems, you'd see a payback of about 13 years. So it is a higher performing building. It's going to have lower operating costs, and that's where that payback is coming from. With the IRA incentive, that will be paid out in, say, year 3 or 4. It will significantly cover the initial cost of that geothermal system, which is an eligible technology for this incentive, and bring back your payback period to be within the first 5 years.
This isn't specific to this project, but ultimately you'll see diagrams that are specific to your point, to what the costs are, what the energy are, so that we can give you true representation of the data based on the options we've decided to shortlist.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Jeremy.
Does the period of performance for the Inflation Reduction Act or the years the money are available cover the project initiation phase? Because again, that was a few years ago. So was it a 5-year period of performance for that, or how many years were built into that? I don't remember off the top of my head.
For the IRA, for the Inflation Reduction Act, right now it sunsets in 2032.
Okay,
So the building would need to be placed in service prior to 2032. So we've got a little bit of time, but I always tell people, subject to change without notice because the federal government's involved, but that's where it stands as of today.
Oops. Exactly. Okay. Next.
Yes, and then, so the Inflation Reduction Act provides tax incentives and credits for technologies like geothermal and solar PV, but it wouldn't cover air source heat pump technology. And then, as previously mentioned, either with an add renovation or new construction, there will be code implications This is a stretch code community, and so there are new compliance paths that will require energy modeling. Either the targeted performance pathway, which is focused on like the passive strategies to make your building as efficient as possible, or passive house, which is a separate certification for compliance.
Last but not least, so in the end, just to wrap this up, I think in the end, as with all of this discussion, is we want to give you all the information you need to make the right decision, that you have buy-in on what it is that you're buying, so you know what it is, that you know how to maintain it and operate it. So all that will happen through this process. Because we really want to start educating the staff that we're working on these systems as soon as we can, as part of the design, that they start to understand what we're talking about, what they're getting, what they're going to be dealing with, how it's different than what they're used to, because there is training that is required and needs to start right now once we start making these decisions. And then, obviously we keep things as simple as we can, but to have enough sophistication where we get the performance that we have to have because of code requirements. And then we'll put all this stuff in play, and then we need to measure and verify that it actually performs the way that we said it would. So through a series of energy models, what you're seeing in all these charts and graphs is that you have a model that will predict what the energy consumption will be, and then we actually will get the utility bills once this thing is done and say, is it performing the way that it was supposed to perform, and track that on a monthly basis to know if it is or isn't. And if it isn't, how are we going to fix it, and what needs to be done to tune it up or to get it better. It's not going to be off wildly, but there could be some controls updates that need to happen, or programming, just basic stuff that has to happen when you turn a building on. So all that will happen. That's years down the road, but I want to go get in your ear that it's a long process, and we want to make sure in the end we get the right system, you know how to use it, and it's functioning the way it's supposed to when we get done, because it's a headache for you if it doesn't. So that concludes our presentation.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, just are the optimization costs built into the initial upfront costs? So is there a service contract that accompanies that covers that? So we're not going to, as the optimization is required, we're not going to encumber like a couple $100,000 in bills? Or?
It would happen through the commissioning process that you would have. Okay. So you haven't procured that yet, but at some point in time you will. Okay. Yeah.
There's usually a 1 to 2 year warranty and commissioning process that we write into the specs. So all of the installing contractors and controls teams are on call, basically. And we almost all of us have remote access to the BMS. So if there's a reported issue, we can jump in, take a peek, see if there's anything we can do. And if it's on site, we'll meet on site. But it's usually 1 to 2 years, could be more on how you write it. It's just there's a cost at some point. So, yeah. Okay. That's a lot. I will, if there's no sort of big questions right now, I think, Jess, I don't know, we'll share that slide tomorrow. Yeah. I think just as a teaser,
we did
if you go back, they did some initial takes at how each of these options are stacking up in terms of, you can see it there, the metrics that they have. We'll talk to the sustainability working group tomorrow about that a little bit more in detail, and then make sure that cycles back to you guys as you're evaluating options. But they've already started to take a pass at how some of these options are affecting the various metrics, and a lot of that is based on orientation, honestly. So with that, I think you
have a question. So are all of these options with all the prospective plans? You were saying earlier that water issues don't drive the plan, but the plan drives the water mitigation system that you create. Having said that, though, since we are not in a place to either eliminate or advance one of the options, are these considerations a consideration for each one of these plans? Or do some of these plans eliminate options because of the various technical civil engineering factors?
The quick answer is that all of the stuff Jess just talked to you about is available in every option that we have on the table right now. So the things we're talking about now are to more just kind of get the wheels spinning. They're available to you in various ways. Now the chart we just skipped over is kind of showing that some of the options are going to be easier to do that than others because of, and again, primarily building orientation. So, for example, NC1 is kind of a pretty bad orientation. So you get glare, you're going to get some issues that we have to resolve with other building elements. When you guys talk about other buildings that you visit and some spots are hot and some spots are cold, that's likely due to a portion of the building that's exposed to glare, and the windows, it just beats in and warms it up, and they have a hard time controlling it. And so all of those things relative to thermal comfort and the systems, it's all available to you with any of these options. So we don't need that to be a metric with which you use to choose the building. We just want you to know that when it comes time to do the building choices, right now the biggest metric you want to think about is kind of orientation, because that's going to have the biggest impact on, initial impact on this. But the systems, drilling down into the systems and, you know, air source versus ground source, that's something we can apply to any option anytime.
So the first slide that I presented that said we were going to look at building orientation and massing, that's really what that's saying. So we said good, better, best really at this point. This one's going to be better than another one because of orientation, or it's more compact, or whatever. So that's really the initial steps we take to say, is there any option that, you know, that is driven better or worse because of these features, is really all that's about. So that'll be discussed, as Chris said, more tomorrow. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I'm gonna go through the options updates. I don't, I'm gonna do it fast too, because I think you guys have these in your packets. You have them in front of you right now, but I'm gonna just pause on a couple of key items that we want to, like new information that's out there. The plans themselves, we don't have to really debate too much yet because they haven't drastically changed into some other new things. So the first thing on here, on this slide, is the last meeting, it was very clear that this project needs to include some it needs to include all the non-educational components that are in this building now. We can't choose to go somewhere else or build a new building and just say, well, they'll just figure it out. And so when we do that analysis, we understand that at the same time, the hardest part of this building currently is the middle section. And it's the section that has, you might think 2 floors, but in reality it's got 11 floors because it's got 3 separate second floors and 6 or 7 different first floors within that. And so the middle portion of the building is what's complicating this entire project, and it's the one that's not accessible. If you had any kind of mobility challenges, getting from the second floor in one spot to the second floor in another one requires a lot of work. And regardless of mobility challenges, just the cognitive challenges of trying to get to one place versus the other is difficult. And so our proposal is that any option in this building that is not a straight-up renovation option would take out the middle of the building, and you would then create an upper portion and a lower portion. You're keeping the bit of the gyms that are very well-sized, they're very well-used, no reason to get rid of them. And then you keep the upper portion, which includes where we're sitting right now, and everything that way. I'm sorry, I'll let.
Catherine, I know this is a lightning round, but may I ask just Chris, a comment on that too, is besides the multi-levels, that middle section also has very outdated science classrooms that we need to address no matter what we do either. So if you could add that to your middle
pros and
school
cons.
problems,
Yeah,
that would be great.
And it's the
And no
bit of the
windows.
building that has no windows. That's what I was going to say. It's no outside windows there. So yes, well taken, thank you. And so what we're trying to respond here is highlight the fact that we have come up with a way for everything from this wing south, kind of directionally, it's let's just call it east, but it's to the right of this diagram, and everything fits there. So you have a 2-story portion here. It's a 2-story portion that extends a little bit over the existing building. But we've talked with district administration. It offers some opportunity to enhance how teachers are offered professional development. It offers public-facing components for the various programs the district does, and it reorients the pre-K to a larger footprint, which is helpful for them and kind of keeps BCAT and other programs where they're at. But this is the way to maintain that. The buildings are currently actually connected from that end to the gym. If we did not do a field here, it could just be open, and that's what we're talking about here. You have multiple options. You can leave it open. A gentleman earlier said maybe put solar there. That could be an option. You could leave it as a field. You could put parking there. You could do a lot of things in that section, but we want to start with the slate and acknowledge that our recommendation is if you're not doing a renovation or an addition renovation to this section, that the middle section's got to go. We got to do something with that. And so that's the start slide there. If you want to go to the next one. Actually, let's, this is AR2. I'm going to go through these lightning speed. AR3, I'm sorry, that's AR8 there. This is Corporate Drive. I will pause here for a second and just show you that when we actually went through capturing the bits of the non-ed space that need to be associated with the high school, so we've captured that as the Science Center and what else is on there?
Oh, right.
It's primarily the Science Center, I think, is the one that we've landed on as needing to have some symbiotic relationship in a building with the high school. And so when we've done that, plus put all of the high school program on this site, you can see the addition of the building got kind of big, and that took over a lot of the site over there. And so you saw the site plan earlier that responds to this, so just continue to evaluate that as you think through the options. NC1, you see here, very long, narrow building. The one comment about this that some of the abutters have brought up is that the ANRAD process, which is on the website, I believe now, which was directly through the Conservation Commission to identify all of the wetlands on the site, pins this building in this shape. So this is responsive to that, trying to build outside of the wetlands. And so if you want a building that is a symbol of wetlands, that's the building you get. And so that's a very long, narrow building. It actually became 4 stories when we tried to get all the program into it. So that's something to consider as well. The NC4 and NC5, we can go right through those because they're similar in nature. And I want to land on here some just scientific data that we're exploring because we're hearing these the concerns of the abutters and neighbors around the varsity field option, which again, I said earlier, it doesn't have to be varsity field, but if we put a field on varsity field, we need to think about what that is. Just today, Bob and I took a trip over to Marshall Simons. We're trying to evaluate different options. Earlier this week, an idea came up where maybe you could put it on the practice fields, and so we're going to look at that. I think that's a little less feasible because it is in the flood zone, and there are complications relative to that. But just to appease some of the neighbors, I think we don't necessarily have to couple varsity field being in the middle of this with NC4 and NC5. That those two things don't have to happen together, but just to keep chasing the idea of varsity field here, we wanted to hear out and test some of the theories. This diagram that's in front of you, we were looking at noise levels, and I think one of the speakers earlier mentioned a survey person or something on site. I believe it was yesterday, if not this morning. I can't remember my days now, but we actually have part of the process here is to get data, science data that is like, I know there's people live here forever, they have feelings and they have experiences about the site, and we want to hear those, we want to hear the stories, but we also need the raw data to engineer from. And so on any site of any magnitude, the DEP actually requires us to do background noise monitoring, and so we went ahead and installed background noise monitors, and that's, if you look around, you'll find them. They're in some trees along the property lines. And so what we're trying to do for the next couple weeks is get a baseline noise reading, and then we have the ability to go back and understand calculated noise registers from playing fields, from bands and stadiums and things like that, and then do engineering that allows us to understand how the decibels affect areas. And so what we're doing with this diagram, you can see sort of the blue lines radiating out from the center of the stands. Excuse me. And the key note on the bottom there, the sort of asterisk is to say that this is before we have the hard data collected from the boxes that are going to tell us what that is, but we're trying to just show the kind of analysis that will emerge from that, right? So if you take the stands and assume that a crowd source there would be peaked at around 100 decibels during a game. It's not steady at 100 decibels. That's like a big play or, something like that happens. It peaks for a few seconds and then it goes back down at 100 decibels. You get the source and then you start to do the decibel algorithms that take you, and it's a logarithmic equation, and it takes you from point 0 out towards the property line. At this point from the stands, the nearest property line is about 300 feet from that source, and the nearest house there at the end of that arrow is about 350 feet. And our calculated noise level, if you use 100 decibels as the peak, it may be plus or minus from that. Again, we'll give you the hard data, but at 300 feet from the source, it becomes about 60 decibels, which the decibel readings is about the level of a normal conversation that you would have between two people talking about 2 or 3 feet away, or say, not all dishwashers are created equal, but the metric says about a dishwasher running in your kitchen. So, so as a point of reference, that's what that is. And the reason you get the background noise data is because you want to make sure that the DEP says whatever we do, we can't raise background noise levels by 10 decibels. So that'll be a metric that we know, and we'll design to it if the design is to move a field in this spot. So that's just a data point, yeah.
Question, though. So we put these up now. Football season's over. So how are we going to measure, that since football season's over? I mean,
So you have to do the background noise data. It's not meant to collect the event. So the way you engineer the events is you have the industry goes through and says, what a sporting event usually is, what a sporting event with marching bands, what a high school sporting event is, what a Patriots game is, and there's data that shows all of those. Okay. That gives us the relative range that we can design to. Okay. Even if I went and audio, I don't know the word, measured your marching band for one touchdown versus the other, it's going to be a range, and so we have the data, we can get that and make that available. So I think that's where we're starting from, and we just need to start, and provide the data and the science behind it. And I know it doesn't make experiences any different, but there is science, so we need to show that.
Perfect. Like I said, I kind of thought that would be a question that someone might ask based on your.
Exactly.
You put these all around on the site. Dr. Conti, did you have a comment or something?
Keep going.
We're good, okay. What's next?
And we also are going to calculate and document the existing light levels. So if you go out there right now, there's lights that are actually probably offensively shining towards the neighbors, and we want to understand that too, because this light metric data that Ty showed you earlier, we actually have an opportunity to probably make that situation better with design. So that's one thing we want to do. This diagram here, there might be some confusion and some misunderstanding as to what exactly is happening when we say underground parking. And so what my team did is try to highlight here, the top view is a section of the building as it exists today, right now. A lot of people don't know about this underground, it's an underground level. It's a level below the first floor.
I believe it's labeled storage.
Yeah, it's labeled storage. And Bob would have to speak. I think one of the speakers earlier asked if that floods or not. I don't have data on that. So the record states that it's dry in there. It's already existing is the point. And so what we were trying to do, you go down to the bottom, the number 2 section, and you can see that when you take out the building in the middle, which we said earlier would be a goal of the project, you actually end up being able to plop a flat surface right on top of where the parking is shown, which is right where the storage is, without needing to do any excavation. And it's already in existing condition. We are not changing anything under the ground, just putting cars there instead of boxes that are there now. And so that is one of the reasons we thought this was a viable option, is to show this. And so this diagram is just showing you, A, on the top existing what it is now, and B, on the bottom, or one on the top, two on the bottom, where it would go from there. And so it shows you that relative connection. And I think that's all I have for drawings. The last, is this is that the last slide of ours? Okay. So at the last meeting, there was a speaker, public comment about planning, and I just wanted to, for the record, update this group and say that we have reached out to the planning board. We've also, like Martha, had conversations with conservation. That's an open dialogue. But with planning specifically, TAPE reached out. We had a conversation with them. We asked them the appropriate timing to talk to planning. They agreed that it's not yet time.
When you say they, it's Elizabeth.
Elizabeth, the town planner, the actual staff town planner, agreed that it's too early because you have too many options, and you usually come when you have one that you're thinking about. They agreed with, you can read the slide. The reality is that the third bullet point is that we have arranged for an informal conversation with some representatives from planning and the town planner themselves, just to kind of give an update on where things are. And Elizabeth, also agreed that the project does fall under Dover, so there's a certain amount of review that planning would be limited to if it came down to that. And so we just want to all get on the same page there early, and I think we are, but that's...
I'm going to ask you a question. Can you give a brief summary of what the Dover Amendment is?
Yeah. So...
Thank you, Terry. That was what I was going to ask you to do, too, because we know what it is, but I'm not sure the community knows.
So Dover Amendment is a legislation, Mass General Law legislation, that was enacted to basically protect any government projects. There's also educationally based projects and nonprofit projects. And what it's really meant to do is allow those uses by right in towns, and not unnecessarily restrict their uses. And so it limits the ability to restrict or reject projects, really, on the basis that they're for the greater public good, and that they should be allowed to exist. Now, it doesn't just give you free rein to do whatever you want. You have to still follow certain rules, like, for example, stormwater and like if you had septic or something like that. Those are not Dover things. It's really just about the limitations that planning would be.
Alexa, stop.
Looking at here are more around bulk, side yard setbacks, things like that. But you know, this isn't a perfect explanation of Dover, but it's just to say that
The height of the building. For
basic things.
Tell us we can't go more than X stories, right?
Yeah, and I think that it's not meant to get around anything, because most of our projects anyway would comply with everything anyway. And so I think that it's just to acknowledge that we're having an early conversation with them, and we plan on to carry on that as the project progresses, and make sure that everybody's happy.
Mimi, I know you've been waiting patiently.
Down to one simple sentence. You can't use zoning to prohibit it.
Pardon me?
Thank you.
Correct.
Yes, thank you.
I said it verbosely.
And just for those of you that were at Fox Hill, I think your emergency backup is diesel, and they had started to go down a path because somebody in planning had said, you know, you can't do that in a residential neighborhood, and spinning wheels, this and that. Eventually, it falls under Dover, and that's why you didn't go forward with a variance, because you don't need it.
Didn't need it, yes. And Mimi, I know you had a question.
Well, it was Barbara LaRue who came, right, last time?
Correct.
I just think, because this is a community project and we want accurate information being conveyed through the various channels of communication, that it behooves TAPA to reach out to her and to have this conversation
Yes.
because the politics.
Yeah, no, so, sorry. Elizabeth is, the town employee. She manages that board. That board will be available. I think we're meeting the week of the 20th. We're just confirming if it's going to be on Tuesday or Thursday.
And the planning board is getting invitations to every single, the group of people they designated. They get an invite to every meeting, and like everyone here, they're more than welcome to show up to every single meeting and ask any question, like any person can ask, from the community. So again, we're not limiting them to asking any questions they may have, but
No,
they have there's a certain point where we would contact and reach out to them once we move forward with our final project, that we would have to get their decision-making ability on, let's put it that way. What did you say, Bob? Is there someone online?
Through the chair, Brenda Rappaport's online, and then Jessica Sullivan is the other rep. They're online, and they've been participating in meetings, so they're here.
They're here.
Monitoring the conversation.
Yep.
Oh, good.
Okay. Alrighty.
We're set. We're done. Yeah.
We're
so,
done?
Yeah.
Yay. Working groups, or we just talked about that? You're going to say that what we just did covered that, right?
Yeah, that's for you.
Yeah, I think we, it's been a long night already, so I think, as usual, we're recording all the working group meetings. I think we're trying to figure out a way to make that available for everybody, so if you're not on one of them, you can still see them, and I think the public should understand.
And if I can ask, are you able to give me an attendance, like how many people are attending each of those working group meetings? As,
I
just,
can't
I'm
off the top
curious.
of my head, but all the meeting minutes, I think we have.
Someone's taking roll call.
Yes,
we have
do.
minutes.
Yeah.
that-
Minutes,
that
right, yeah, I just
identify-
want, I just want to see, because I want to make sure that we're, I know you accommodated by doing some 4 o'clock meetings and 6 o'clock meetings. I just want to make sure that we, of the group of people who volunteered to be on the working groups, that we have more than 2 people showing up every
Right.
time.
Yeah.
If we have 6 that are supposed to be coming, right?
Yeah.
So we got to figure out a way to get more participation if we're not getting at the times that have been available. That's all.
Gotcha. Yep.
Right. All right, so we did all the public comment before, and I'd mentioned we were not going to do it again at the end of the
So
meeting.
can we go back to that slide, because I need to talk a little
Yes.
bit. Thanks.
Yep. And, I'm sorry, Bob, what did you?
So they put her hand down, but Jess from Planning Board did have her hand up.
Oh,
Okay.
was there someone online from Planning Board who had a question? Was it?
Hi, Jessica Sutherland, Vice Chair of Planning Board. I've just been listening in. I had attended one of the, not the last meeting, but one of the sessions at the high school prior. I think I understand what you all were saying around, the Dover Amendment. I would hope, though, if we're spending the amount of money that we're going to be spending, that that is not necessarily something that y'all are deciding to kind of limit participation, because
No.
I think the board
not what we said.
is
We just said.
in
We
general
just said.
agreement that, I'm sorry?
No, we just said that we want you to participate in every meeting and comments, questions, whatever. We're not limiting you to anything.
Yes.
Right.
And that's great. I mean, I think you will find that the board is in general agreement that obviously there's a lot of necessary things to do for this high school. And I think we just want to make sure we are all very much on the same page. I will talk to Liz. I would disagree that it's too early in the process to have an information session, because I think there's a lot for us to discuss and hopefully come to, an understanding. And I would also love to see the board have access to a much more detailed calendar. I know there's some stuff available on the website, but even looking at, the Lexington's master calendar, there's far more detail in that one. So I think it would be very helpful if you could share with planning staff who could pass on to the board a much more detailed calendar.
We hear you. Thank you. And Terry, did you have something else?
Yeah, so I'm cognizant of time, and typically with these working group reports, I would ask a member of each of those to provide a summary. I want to kind of focus on just really one of them, which is the community outreach group. We've mentioned this, but I just want to get it out there. Back before the holidays, Dr. Conti, Chris, and I had an interview with BCAT that is long, where a lot of questions. It's a 55-minute video. Top tip, just speed it up, and it cuts it down in half. But my voice might get a little squeaky, but that I think it's a really useful medium and that we're going to continue to use through updates with Dr. Conti and answer questions through that. There is the Community Expo on January 15th, so we will have a table there to answer questions. We are going to be scheduling in-house or tours within the building and really working with the school. I would love to actually have students lead those tours, and obviously the professional staff will be there to answer questions, but I do think it's important that the community hears from the end users, and the end users are the teachers, are the students, and you know, they're not represented here, and they're a critical component, and so I want to figure out how to get them more involved.
I do want to make a comment, though. We had 2 student representatives that graduated, and we're in the process of trying to get 2 more student representatives who will be coming to the meetings regularly, in addition to what you were just saying, that we're trying to find a way to get the students to be able to do a project, for example, to talk about what, you know, current state is, and the challenges of the way, you know, when we talk about, 6 first floors and trying to get to class, it's not convenient. So, you know, some of the things and the challenges of some people think, you know, just renovate the current building and leave it as it is. It still leaves us with a poor design no matter what you do. So it's just kind of going through with that and understanding from their perspective what something new might do for them. Or, again, reno, whatever what we decide on. We're not leaning on any one thing. We haven't made any decisions, but just get their input and perspective.
Mark is telling me they'll be ready for next meeting.
Oh, excellent. Because I did talk to you earlier today, so great.
I mentioned Thought Exchange. That will open up coinciding with the expo and the release of a video that we mentioned earlier. That's going to be open for about 3.5 weeks. And it will be very easy to publish that through the school community, working with Dr. Conti's team to get it out to the entire school. I intend to engage with Nikki Cadillac at Burlington Buzz to get it out through that. There will be other mediums. Clearly, getting it to the abutters is not going to be very difficult for me because I have a feeling I'll be speaking to some of them very soon. But you know, dropping something off at the senior centers, like figuring out and utilizing your own social medias to get it out there. I know it's a new thing, but it is useful, and it gauges sentiment. And I think that's going to be important for this group to understand. And it allows people to have a voice. Sometimes the loudest voices aren't the ones that, you know, you should be listening to. So we just need to do that. The community forum will be on February 12th. That'll be in the auditorium. So that's where we are on some community outreach. Another meeting that we're doing with another town board is we're presenting to Ways and Means on the 22nd. I'll be coming there and providing kind of an update on where we are and just generally walking through some of the information that we've had before. So Doug and I have arranged for that. And other working group meetings are ongoing. So to the extent you are part of a working group, I know it's time consuming, but it's critically important that we have the input of the members on those specific groups. So with that, I will shut my mouth.
Okay, so again, I think some of the next meetings have already been brought up, but again, there's the Expo, January 15th at 5 p.m., a community meeting, number 2, February 12th at 6:30 p.m., and our next high school building committee meeting is February 13th at 6:30. And all the upcoming meetings, I mean, this whole presentation is on the website.
It will be tomorrow.
Yep, yeah, tomorrow, yep. So Okay, I just wanted to see what you were trying to point out. So anyway, I think if we've covered everything we need to cover, so if someone wants to make a motion to
I
adjourn.
move we adjourn.
Madam Chair, can I just?
Yes, sure.
I don't like making motions after 9:30, so I have about 5 minutes here, but, and if not now, then I'm probably going to make it early in the next meeting, because we have to start narrowing down choices.
Yep.
Just for sort of some factual history, because I've heard 1,000 different things. I initially contacted Gutierrez, Scott Weiss, after meeting him at the Burlington Chamber of Commerce. He was more than generous with his time in terms of showing us 10 Corporate Drive. We went to an initial meeting. We brought the building meeting there. I don't have any familiarity with sort of square footage of space. Thought that could have been a viable option. I think if the building were 100,000 square feet bigger with more parking spots and we had about 200,000 square feet to work with, my opinion would change. I do think if we had a 400-student high school, my opinion may change. I just don't see that as being a viable site, given that we would have to double the square footage. We would reduce the number of parking we have now. We would still have to get kids from one campus to the other campus, not easily. And that would either set up some transportation. We'd have to do a different grade configuration and make it a 9th or 10th grade academy. And then still have to renovate this building here. I'm not seeing that as wanting to ask these guys to spend any more time on that site. So again, if not now, and it's certainly up to you, I would move that we eliminate 10 Corporate Drive. But if not, I'm just sort of telling you I'd like to make that motion earlier in the meeting. And if people want to have more discussion, understanding that it's 9:30 now, that I'm as the person who initiated that conversation, I'm not seeing the viability of it. So please don't say I wasn't committed to it, because
No.
I was certainly committed to it. And if there's a 240,000 square foot building somewhere that has fields and parking, I am in. I just don't see this site functioning for all that you all have said. Terry, you were asked to look into a pedestrian bridge, and I know that you did some work looking at a pedestrian bridge at another, not a school project, but on a municipal project, and they are extremely expensive, adding potentially another $50 million to the project. And parking garages, if we were to put a 2 or 3 story parking garage in there, never mind, I don't think the town necessarily likes parking garages. Those are also extremely expensive as well. So I would move, again, does not need to be seconded tonight, that we take 10 Corporate Drive off of our options list moving forward. Not that it wasn't a good idea, and not that we should not have explored it. I think we should have.
Agreed.
Can I second Dr. Conti's motion?
Sure. So I think we've got a motion, we've got a second. Is there any additional discussion? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take, Martha.
I just want to say that I am going to vote in favor of this motion to eliminate that option. That doesn't mean that there aren't drawbacks to other options. There are advantages and disadvantages to all the options, but at this point, am willing to eliminate this one.
So yeah, why don't we take the next minute or two to go through and take a vote then, to eliminate that, and that way they're spinning their wheels working on more viable projects and less time on that one.
Public discussion on that motion?
No, there's not. That's what this committee's for. So I'm going to go through and take a vote. Chris Monaco?
Aye.
Jeremy Brooks?
Aye.
Megan?
Yes.
Melissa?
No.
Okay, Dr. Conti?
Yes.
All right, Lisa Chen?
Yes.
Joe Adubato?
Yes.
Mimi?
Yes.
Okay, Chris is not here. Nicole?
Yes.
Did she say yes? Bob?
Yes.
Wendy's not here. John Denizia's not here. Doug?
Yes.
And Neil's not here. Laura? Is she still online?
Yes.
Okay. Gail?
Yes.
All right, and Tom's not here, Paul's not here. Martha, you said you were a yes? And Mark Sullivan?
Yes.
And the chair is a yes, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 yeses, 1 no, and no abstentions. All right, so that passed. So we want to have a motion then to go ahead and
I
adjourn.
move we adjourn.
Second. All right, all in favor? All right. Thank you, everyone. Meeting's adjourned.